The future of Ontario is in our hands. Today, we'll discover where our decisions stand. Our Ontario is home to diversity and culture from every nation. A gathering place, surrounded by Great Lakes, woodlands, and a beautiful landscape, this decision will determine our future, our fate. This election is brimming with key issues that impact us all, from the cost of living, transit, minimum wage, housing, environment, and a healthcare system that is often delayed. We've placed our votes in hopes of change. 3 candidates have presented promises that require our further critical attention. Andrea Horvath, Doug Ford, and Kathleen Wynne lead this election, and ultimately, the fate Ontario is destined. I was told once that politics is about community building. So which one of these candidates would you trust to guide your children? This provincial election impacts the federal election to come. Did you choose a leader that will impact and unify Ontario as one? We cannot afford to be dug into situations we cannot win, like service privatization that often gets under the public's skin, or the sheer negligence of misused tax dollars that we pay for when they falter. Regardless of the leader we've chosen, we the people must be at the epicenter of their decisions. Hopefully we've carefully reviewed their policies, and the next premier is the best premier to bring about better living. As a democracy, we the citizens hold great power. If we plant the right seeds, we'll bloom like Ontario's trillium flower for generations to come, building Ontario the right way for the old and young. As citizens, voting is our privilege. It's our right. Stay tuned to see how your decision impacted election night.
That was spoken word artist Randell Ajay, and we thank him for that, and we thank you for being here with us. Welcome to Ontario Votes 2018. I'm Dwight Drummond, and joining me tonight is Rosemary Barton, host of The National, very familiar face when it comes to politics in our country.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to miss this night for the world, Dwight. This is what we call a change election. The voters' desire for change is going to make this an interesting night. Less than an hour now until the polls close.
You can see the countdown clock at the bottom of your screen. When that hits 0, the results start rolling in.
And the good news is we're live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. No excuse not to watch tonight. And if you're watching us there, we want to hear from you too. We'll get to some of your Facebook questions a little bit later in the show. All
right, let's get started. The Ontario Progressive Conservatives haven't won an election yet this century. So could tonight be the night? Let's head out live to Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley at PC headquarters in Etobicoke. And Mike, his predecessor said the party could snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Is this Doug Ford's race to lose?
Well, absolutely, Dwight. Look, the PCs have had a tumultuous last 5 months, but they headed into this campaign with a lead in the polls of about 15 points. Our projections are that they are still leading, but not by much. The PCs would have rather had a much bigger lead than they've got right now. And so tonight is when we're going to find out what happens.
Not that long ago, Doug Ford wasn't even running to be Premier of Ontario.
I know where it is in my heart and where my heart is. And here today, I'm officially going to announce that I will be running for Mayor of Toronto.
Then this happened.
It's not my values, it's not how I raised, it's not who I am.
Patrick Brown resigns. Ford launches his bid to replace Brown from his mom's basement.
To give a voice to the hardworking taxpayers of this province, people who have been ignored.
The PC leadership race reveals deep discord in the party.
People want to know which Christine they're going to get.
A month ago, you wanted to be mayor of the city of Toronto, and when you found out this job was available, you decided that this is what you wanted to do.
The celebration to announce the new leader is delayed so long that PC members are told to go home before Ford is declared the winner by a whisker.
I will get our party back on track.
Ford tries to heal the wounds with what he calls a unity rally, but none of his rivals even speak on stage. It previews a campaign that the PC team tries to win on Ford's brand alone.
Putting money back into people's pocket instead of the government's pocket.
Ford's rallies draw large and diverse crowds of supporters, yet it's a campaign that you would not describe as smooth. The PCs restrict media access to Ford, and his performance in the debates is erratic.
Kathleen, you got a nice smile on your face.
What Ford calls his platform doesn't show a budget.
I can assure you not one single person will be laid off.
With just 10 days to go, for the first time in the campaign, Ford finally appears with his leadership rivals.
I want to thank all our all-star candidates for coming.
It's designed to reassure soft PC voters who are uncertain about Ford. Still, controversies dog the campaign, topped off by a last-minute bombshell, a lawsuit alleging Ford is mismanaging the family inheritance.
Those claims are false and without merit, and I can tell you this is going to be proven in court.
Now, the room is filling up here at PC headquarters in Etobicoke. I've been speaking to a number of people within the PC campaign. They're feeling pretty confident. They're liking the turnout numbers that they're seeing. The turnout is not that high. The latest numbers they had from Elections Ontario was about 44% of voters have shown up. That's telling them that they're tracking towards about 51% turnout overall. And the reason why the PCs like that is that there's not some sort of surge of millennials showing up to vote that was unexpected. So the PCs are feeling quietly confident right now. Back to you.
All right, that vote definitely the wild card in this election. There are more seats up for grabs tonight than we're used to, 124. 17 of them are brand new. That's just one of the factors that will make tonight very interesting. Eric Grenier is our CBC poll analyst. Mike Wise is keeping an eye on the map for us tonight. So let's check in with them. Eric, Mike.
Oh, Dwight, Elections Ontario says about 95% of the ridings in Ontario have changed, either new names or new boundaries. We're going to be tracking them tonight on our map here. Not a lot of results we can show you at this hour because, of course, the polls haven't closed yet, Eric.
And because there are these new ridings throughout the province, what we've done is we've taken the results from 2014 and all the provincial by-elections that have happened since then to apply those results on this new map. This is our starting point for tonight.
And we'll start with Northern Ontario. Take a look at how the map looks in Northern Ontario. You can see the majority of the seats here, orange for NDP. The Liberals had 2 seats in the Thunder Bay area that they were holding on at this point. Let's go south, though, to the Greater Toronto area and talk about the situation down here.
Absolutely key battleground for tonight. The New Democrats, they need to win in seats in Brampton, Mississauga, Scarborough, turn those red seats orange. If they don't, they might go over to the PCs, and if that happens, probably looking at a PC majority government for Doug Ford. Okay, and let's go down to southwestern Ontario. A lot of blue. You'll see Tory support down there as well, but pockets of NDP support in some urban areas as well. We're not expecting a lot of NDP and PC incumbents to go down in defeat, but if it does happen, could be in southwestern Ontario. Lots of interesting PC-NDP battles. Okay, and there's NDP support in Hamilton area, Niagara as well. But let's finish and we'll go to Eastern Ontario, a part of the province you are familiar with as well. Tell us what we should be looking at there. The key storyline here is the Liberal vote, because they need 8 seats to get official party status. If they do that, a lot of them are likely going to come from the Ottawa area. So if that area stays red, that'll be good news for the Liberals, and they need some good news tonight. Okay, for now, let us reset the map as we wait for the results, and we'll send it back to you, Dwight.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now, throughout this campaign, NDP leader Andrea Horvath's message to voters was simple. You have another choice. You don't have to vote PC or Liberal. Chris Glover is out at NDP headquarters in Hamilton. And Chris, Horvath's own riding of Hamilton Centre is one of 4 in that city, not all of which lean NDP.
Just one indication of the amount of work Andrea Horvath and the NDP had to do right in this region and across the province as well. But that is work that they say that they have done and done it successfully. Talking with a lot of the supporters trickling in tonight, they are optimistic of their chances tonight. Of course, a little bit nervous as well, as there was a bit of stall in the NDP support in the last few days of this campaign. But as I mentioned, they are feeling confident, and Andrea Horvath, over the course of this campaign, she had said that you can choose between bad and worse, or you can choose me. There is a different option. She presented herself as the leader who was above the fray, but for the first time ever, Andrea Horvath was more in the fray than she's been in an election campaign.
You and the developers in the back room about the green belt? And well, these two our hydro bills are going through the roof while these two argue.
In the beginning, it looked like the NDP leader would get shut out of the conversation again, but with one of the most grueling campaign schedules.
Thank you, Brampton! It's wonderful to be here in Sarnia. It's great to be here at the Ironworkers Local 721.
And their biggest ad budget.
For so long, Kathleen Wynne's Liberals have been hitting us from every direction.
Ontarians started paying attention. Then around the May-long weekend, the surge hit. NDP! NDP! Polling started rolling in Andrea Horvath's favor.
Everywhere we go, we can feel the momentum of our campaign.
And at their biggest rally in years, she seemed to start believing what she was selling.
Something special is happening in Ontario!
But with the surge came the scrutiny, a $1.4 billion accounting error.
I think the most important thing is that we realized we made a mistake and thought it was important to be honest about that.
And several rookie candidates with social media missteps.
Multiple NDP candidates have slandered our veterans, our soldiers, and our police.
By the second leaders debate, though, Horvath was more confident and aggressive than ever.
You don't respect the collective bargaining process.
Not just in the conversation, but the one with the target on her back.
I know that you are beholden. You're beholden to the unions on this. I get that.
Kathleen, wow.
I get that.
God forbid the NDP ever get in. They will destroy our province.
A precarious lead stitched together with witty one-liners.
People don't have a sense of what Mr. Platform. That's a good slip, right? What Mr. Ford's platform is all about.
So certainly a different Andrea Horvath by the end of this campaign than the one that we started with, much more confident and dipping into ridings where the NDP have never won in the final days of this campaign, just in Burlington on Monday. The big question, though, was it all enough? That's what the supporters in this room want to find out. Dwight?
And we will find out tonight. Thank you for that, Chris. Now, Kathleen Wynne said sorry, not sorry for her record. She gambled and told voters, don't worry, I won't be the next premier, so it's okay to vote for other Liberal candidates. Now her party is just trying to stay afloat by getting enough seats to keep their official party status. Lisa Shing is live in North York at Liberal Party headquarters. And Lisa, 15 years of Liberal rule coming to an end tonight. The question is, just how badly will Kathleen Wynne's Liberal lose tonight?
Well, Dwight, I think it would be safe to say that it would be extremely shocking to see any kind of comeback from the Liberals or Kathleen Wynne tonight, especially considering she conceded defeat just last weekend. But on the campaign trail, she never really let up, changing strategies multiple times to try and keep the Liberals relevant.
I don't know who voters will choose. That is up to them. But I'm pretty sure that it won't be me.
A stunning admission as the Liberal leader admits defeat. Instead, using the last weekend before the election to send this message.
Even if we don't form government, we can make sure that we don't have a majority government of NDP or Doug Ford.
A last-minute shift in strategy, trying to keep the party afloat. She fielded question after question about being in third place.
The odds have always been against me.
Wynne fought it out at first when she thought she was neck and neck with Doug Ford.
We talked to teachers, though. Andrew, can I just hold on 1 second?
But as the NDP surged ahead, another shift.
Sorry, not sorry. I'm really genuinely sorry that more people don't like me.
Wynne laid all her cards on the table, offering voters an apology of sorts, acknowledging the anger over high electricity prices and selling off Hydro One.
I'm not sorry for keeping business taxes low and attracting Google and Toyota here.
The Liberal leader came out defending her party's record after weeks of what critics say was a largely lackluster start.
Almost half of the people of this province will be covered by OHIP Plus and will have free prescription medication.
She offered up a long list of spending promises, including drugs, dental care, daycare. Some saw it as a last-ditch effort.
I'm definitely Liberal, but the problem is I do not like what's going on with Wynne.
The Premier of Ontario, Kathleen Wynne.
In the last weekend of the campaign, Wynne got a little help from her friends. Former Prime Minister Paul Martin joined her on the trail. But whether any of this helped put her back in the game is up to voters.
There are lots of people who might have been thinking about voting Conservative and they're now second guessing.
But with Doug Ford leading the polls, Wynne acknowledged her position head on.
Are we in a horse race in this election? Absolutely. This is a tough election. There is no doubt about that.
So a bit of a subdued mood here at Liberal headquarters. Not a lot of people have shown up just yet as well. And even though the Kathleen Wynne signs are up, the booze is out, the food is out, all set up for a party, but I don't think that there's going to be a celebration here tonight, Dwight.
Yeah, tough election might be an understatement by Kathleen. Thank you, Lisa. Now, have the candidates done enough to sway your vote? We have lots of analysis for you tonight. My co-host, Rosemary Barton, is with a group of insiders. And Rosie, history in the making tonight.
Yeah, I think that's without a doubt here, Dwight. We do expect this to be a change election. And so we gathered three very smart ladies and strategists to help guide us through the results tonight and give us their sense from what they know about the parties. Kathleen Monk is an NDP strategist. Jenny Mauvet is a Conservative strategist. And Tiffany Gooch, a Liberal strategist. So glad you're all here. And we have this comfy couch. We can just like take our time and dig into stuff. Okay, I'll start with you, Kathleen. What are you going to watch for tonight?
It's three top things. I'm looking for turnout, obviously. We're hearing from Elections Canada actually that we're on par to either meet 2014 turnout, which was quite high. It was over 51%, and maybe even exceed it. So I want, as a change election, I want turnout to be high. So hopefully that can mean an orange wave. Right. Other thing, I'm looking at the gender vote. Where will women land in this vote? We know that women have generally been uncomfortable with voting for Ford and for the Conservatives. So if they turn out in higher numbers, that means possibly we will have a progressive government, NDP government. Last thing quickly, the 416. I know no one wants to hear that outside of the Toronto area, but ultimately it will be up to the 416 to decide this election and whether or not we can stop Doug Ford.
Yeah, and if Doug Ford says, and he seems to think he can get in there into the 416, that's probably a good sign for him. But what are you looking for, Jenny?
So I think Doug Ford will make gains in the 416, but I'm looking outside. I'm looking at that seat-rich 905. The demographics have exploded there. There are just more people every year living in the GTA, in that big ring around Toronto. Yeah. And because of that, we have a lot more seats there. Almost half of the seats in the province are really in that greater GTA, if you include areas like Hamilton. So whoever does well in that is going to win government. It's sort of a fact. So can the NDP break through in the GTA? Will the Liberals will the bottom drop out the way it has? We've seen it in the polls. So I'm looking at that GTA. I'm also looking at a few other ridings where I think there'll be some really interesting three-way splits, where we see some Liberals hold on, maybe. And it could go one of three ways. In Guelph, it could go one of four ways.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We might see a green seat for the first time ever in Ontario history. Tiffany?
Yeah, so I think the Premier acknowledged the elephant in the room. This isn't a race where we're looking too closely at whether we'll be forming the government, but I think there are definitely a lot of local, very strong MPPs that I'll be looking at who have incredible records locally and have a really great ground game, so I'm hoping for a few surprises. Of course, there are some Toronto ridings, Ottawa. Yeah. I'm looking at the north as well. I think a lot of the polling that we've been looking at has sort of been regional, and we've had some great members who locally are really well liked, and so hoping that we'll be able to pull those votes
out. How will we know whether the Kathleen Wynne gamble paid off? What will be the sign of that? Start with you.
Well, I don't think that the gamble lost us any seats necessarily. I think from what I saw and the people that I talked to or was campaigning with, the opportunities that they had after that to canvass, they were likely actually seeing a lot of undecideds that were willing to vote for the candidate that were sort of on the fence because of the Premier. And so I'm not really sure, but we'll have to see tonight.
Is it just if one of your parties is held to a minority, then that means that gamble won? Jenny?
You can't instruct strategic voting unless you give people a list and say this is how you strategically vote. Yeah. So I'm not sure that connected. I think the sorry not sorry piece may have rallied Liberals, like those diehard Liberals, to actually get out, get motivated in a time where they're pretty demotivated to knock on doors and do the hard work that goes into trying to win seats. Yeah. But in elections, winners are always brilliant and losers are always stupid. And that's not actually the case. It's so much more complicated than that. And we'll never know, based on how many seats the Liberals win, if they would have won less or fewer. Or sorry, fewer or more.
Yeah, last word.
I would say we only understand the effect of what Kathleen Wynne did last Saturday tonight. Yeah. We can't know in the in-between. I think that it may have actually suppressed some voters. Those PC voters who are out there to really make sure that Wynne was gone, they don't actually need to come out and vote now, so it might have an impact on Ford's voters. It also depressed a lot of the Liberal vote, kind of, and so those may drift elsewhere. So we'll have to see when the polls close.
And that's what makes it so interesting, and the whole night will be this interesting. And Kathleen, Jenny, and Tiffany will be with us all night to help us understand. And we're so thrilled that you're all here. I'll go throw it back to you, Dwight.
Thank you, Rosie. Now, once the results start rolling in, we want to show you how we'll project winners for each riding and for the province. This is a live look at the CBC News Decision Desk, a group of veteran journalists who have been studying these ridings and their histories. When polls begin reporting, they'll start crunching the numbers, analyzing the data of this election and those in the past, along with what's happening in that riding. And when they are confident that the voters' decision is clear, they will project a winner. Now, what's motivating voters in this election? Take your pick: hydro, healthcare, the high cost of living. Ontario has seen a massive increase in the price of housing, too. The dream of owning your own home is just a dream for many. Here's how one Ontario family explains it.
Oh, so you are for two.
We very much want Dara to have a sibling. Space is a concern.
Housing.
Yeah.
We aren't a family of a great deal of means. We know we're probably going to be renters. Yes. And now we're in a situation where our existing landlord is applying for above guideline increases. In general, they get these increases. It's the slow grind of the loss of your home.
We're always wondering, like, when is the year going to come where we have to make that decision to move? And when we make that decision, where are we going to be able to go? We want our vote to make a difference in access to housing. I'm Siham Chaudhary.
And I'm Sean Carson. And this is our election story.
Affordable housing is one of the big issues also facing voters in the 905, and picking up seats there will be crucial to winning this election. Farah Morelli is spending tonight out in York Region. Farah, what's going on there tonight?
Well, Dwight, I'm at the Vaughan Civic Center Resource Library, and we're actually hosting our very own election viewing party tonight here. We've got a screen set up, we've got some chairs. We want you to come on down and take in the live results with us tonight and weigh in as well on what are the issues that you voted on in this election. Vaughan is, of course, in the 905, which is the area that surrounds the city of Toronto, and this is going to be a region that the party leaders are going to be watching extremely closely tonight. And the reason why, well, the party that takes the most seats in the election in Ontario almost always claims victory. In fact, that's what's happened in the last 6 elections in this province. Joining me now is someone who knows a fair bit about politics in the region, Maurizio Bevilacqua. He is the mayor of the city of Vaughan and a longtime serving MP. Mayor, thanks for joining us tonight.
Welcome to the city of Vaughan.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Let's start by talking about the 905. How crucial has it been for the leaders to spend time in this region during the campaign?
905, very important. A lot of economic growth in this area. Here in the city of Vaughan, we're outpacing the province and the country in growth at 3.5%. We've created approximately 55,000 jobs since 2010. This is an area of prosperity that requires, of course, investments. As you probably may know, this is the first city outside of the city of Toronto that has a subway connected. That was a major investment that is going to create 12,000 units, residential units. Over 30,000 people will live in this area. We're also investing approximately, the province invested approximately $1.6 billion to build the first smart technology hospital in the country. And we've seen over the past few years major investment in transit and roadworks. It augurs well for the future of the area, but absolutely a very important area for leaders, whoever the next premier is going to be. The province of Ontario needs to focus in areas like the city of Vaughan because their investments have actually produced fantastic results. Like the economic growth of 3.5% is one of the highest in North America. Jobs are created and prosperity is very much part of the reality here.
Mayor, thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time, and we hope that you'll stick around for this event here tonight. If you are in Vaughan or if you are in the York region, come on down to the Civic Center Resource Library. We'll be here until one party claims victory tonight. Dwight. Yeah,
that'll be a fun viewing party. Thank you, Farah. The results will eventually tell us how people voted, but we can also tell you why they made the decision. Vote Compass is an online survey that voters took to voice their views on this election. Maribel Tarouk has been going through the data for us. What did you find, Maribel?
Well, they took part in this survey in droves, Dwight. More than 460,000 Ontario voters taking part in the Vote Compass survey. That is the largest sample size ever taken in Ontario, asking some very key questions, including one of trust. So a Vote Compass question where the data was previously published asked voters, how trustworthy do you find each of the party leaders? So let's go through it here, starting with women's views of each of the party leaders, Doug Ford scores a 2 out of 10 on the scale of trustworthiness as far as women voters in Ontario go. Mike Schreiner, leader of the Green Party, fares a little bit better, 4 out of 10. Kathleen Wynne, just a bit better than Doug Ford at 3 out of 10. But take a look at Andrea Horvath's number here, 6 out of 10 in terms of the trustworthiness scale as decided by women voters who took part in this survey. We also asked the men, and so the men's numbers are coming up here, and they rate Doug Ford a 3 out of 10 on the scale of trustworthiness. Mike Schreiner, 4 out of 10. Kathleen Wynne, 2 out of 10. And once again, the leader of the NDP, Andrea Horvath, coming in at 5 out of 10 on the trustworthiness scale from Vote Compass. So all through the night, Dwight, we're going to be taking a look at some of the key issues that voters expressed in this survey, and that might help us figure out how the results are coming in when they start coming in.
All right, Maribel, we will talk to you later. We have another 34 minutes until the polls close, but when the results start coming in, you'll want to check out what we have online. Get that second screen out. On this page, you can get up to the second results as the polls report and customize how you see them. You can pick specific writings to follow, a whole bunch, or just your own, whichever are the most important to you. Or you can choose to watch the closest races, the results in specific regions, or the results for each party. Now, there's no doubt there's a lot riding on this night for Ontario residents. The federal parties are keeping a close eye on this election. Vashi Kapalos, the host of CBC's Power and Politics, joins us live now. And Vashi, how involved were the federal parties in this race?
Hey, Dwight. Well, the short answer is it kind of depends. At the local level, there were a lot of MPs of all party stripes who helped out their local candidates. But if you ratchet it up and you start looking at the party's leadership, there are definitely differences. Jagmeet Singh, the federal NDP party's leader, the NDP leader, has had a tough few months, a little bit of struggles with his leadership. And so it's no surprise that he attached himself quite firmly to the provincial NDP, the party he actually came from. He did some campaigning. He was seen very visibly to be out with the party. It's a different story when you talk about Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives and Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. I'll start with Andrew Scheer, who says that he is not going to be voting in this election because he's a resident of Saskatchewan, though I'll point out he does live in the official residence of the opposition in Ottawa right now. He did only come out once during this campaign and say he supports Doug Ford, that things would be better off with Doug Ford, but other than that, relative silence from him and not a high level of visibility with any real Conservative candidates, especially Doug Ford. At the same time, the Liberals, it's a very similar story. You did not see Justin Trudeau, even though he said at the beginning during the writ, I'm not going to be out there, but you really didn't see him talking a lot about Kathleen Wynne or showing up to anything. That is interesting because in the past, he has been very visible and his government has been very visibly aligned with the provincial government here. So it says something that there was a little bit of distance created during this campaign.
So, Vashi, what does that then mean if the Liberal Party is decimated here in this province? What does it mean for the federal Liberals?
Well, I mean, everybody's looking towards the next election, the federal election in 2019. And this provincial election and what happens to a provincial party isn't necessarily a predictor of what will happen at the federal level. But what it does mean is that it sort of changes the conversation around the table between the provinces and the federal government, which is already kind of a rough conversation right now. So imagine, if you will, that Premier Wynne is replaced by Premier Ford, somebody who says he's actively going to campaign and fight against the Prime Minister's climate change plan and carbon tax plan. Well, that makes things a little rougher. And then you've also got the possibility of another election in Alberta very soon where another Conservative leader could be voted in. And then you've got a little bit of an alliance and, again, a much tougher dynamic, you could say, for the Prime Minister around that table. So it could have a big impact as far as the relationship between the federal government and the provinces, but it isn't necessarily a predictor for how the federal Liberals will do in 2019. Dwight?
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Vashi.
You're welcome.
Now, given where the Liberals are in the polls, Mike Crawley, was there ever an opportunity for the Liberals to turn this around?
You know, Dwight, at the beginning of this campaign, the Liberals were in it, and they didn't exactly run a terrible campaign. In fact, their war room worked really well to try to drive out negatives about Doug Ford. But what seemed to happen is just that nothing they did or said got any traction, and they just started sliding and sliding and sliding. So then you go and look back and think, well, was there something that they could have done a little bit earlier? Could they have done something different in the budget? It just seemed that they threw everything that they had at Ontarians in that budget, like as if they were going to promise them the sun and the moon and the stars. There was pharmacare promises, there was daycare promises, lots and lots of spending. And, you know, it just did not seem to resonate at all with the people of Ontario. And then you got to start going, well, maybe there was something that they could have done a little earlier to stop that slide. Dwight?
And we heard from voters who said it actually, that budget felt like a bit of a bribe here. And you mentioned they could have done something earlier. Should Kathleen Wynne have resigned last year?
I think that's the big armchair quarterback question everybody is asking about this campaign. One of the things that was most remarkable about what was going on within the Liberals over the past year or so was, given how low Kathleen Wynne's approval ratings were, that there wasn't a big revolt in her caucus, you know, trying to throw her out. They actually felt that Kathleen Wynne was the leader to take them into this campaign and actually win it. They had polling that seemed to suggest that even though she was unpopular, that people respected her ability to make the tough decisions. But you know, really, I think if you look back a year ago and had Kathleen Wynne made the decision to say, I'm not going to be the leader, her personal popularity was just too low, the party would have been thrown into a leadership race. And I actually don't know if there was anybody waiting in the wings that could have actually won this election for them. We'll never know, of course, but speculation is lots of fun at this stage.
All right, well, let's continue with some speculation, some insights. Let's head back over to Rosie with the panel. So we know the Liberals aren't going to win tonight, Rosie.
No, they're not, and Tiffany doesn't. Tiffany's not going to have the easiest night, she admits, but she's going to persevere anyway. So let's just go through the keys to victory. We talked about some of the ridings, but some of the places where the NDP and the PCs and what they have to, you know, what they've done to try and get to this next stage. I mean, I think it's remarkable that the third party, NDP, is now seriously vying for government. How did that happen, that switch, do you think, Kathleen?
Well, if you rewind a little bit, just in January, we were, you know, at that point, 15 points behind the Liberals, 20 or more points behind the Progressive Conservatives. So it is pretty remarkable. But listen, kudos to the organization team in the NDP, because they have run more full campaigns in more regions of the province than this party has ever done. They have knocked on over, I think it's like 300,000 doors, you know, fundraising's through the roof. These are the things that matter. But more than that, Horvath was able to run a flawless campaign. She didn't get kicked off message. There were a few challenges, certainly with some candidates, certainly
some math, some math in the platform.
Well, I mean, she corrected that.
She corrected it, but it was there.
To the point, you know, Kevin Page didn't find it the first time either, and it took you know, David Reevely from the Ottawa Citizen to find it. So kudos to him. That said, I think that what they have done is put forward a platform that was hopeful, that was optimistic, that said, if you can't, we know you want to throw out Wynne, so if you can't vote for Ford, we are a viable option. And so the growth in that campaign, the growth of her positives, I mean, Vote Compass even said that, right? She's trusted. People believe in her. She's an authentic leader.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's campaign was flawless, to be fair, but I would agree that she became more of a leader as the campaign went on. I don't think you could dispute that. She sort of grew into herself,
right? She was with people. Her events, she had a very rigorous tour schedule. She did multiple events a day. She had media with her, and she scrummed till the questions were over. I mean, she really did.
So so on the flip side, a different campaign for Doug Ford, and there were parts of me throughout the campaign that wondered whether they shouldn't have let him out of the box a little bit, because he can be a really likable guy, and I'm not sure everybody saw that. But despite that, it seems to have at least got him to this place.
Yeah, and don't forget where we came from. Yeah. I mean, this is one of the shortest paths to a potential premier that we've had maybe in the history of Ontario. Yeah. Super fast leadership election, and then basically 90 days until E-Day. Right. So, you know, and I think people talk about where the PCs were in the poll previous to that leadership. I think there was a bit of vote parking going on there. People were deciding they were done with the Liberals, and they didn't quite know who they were going to support yet. So I think there was some parking with the PCs. That solidified throughout the campaign, thanks to Doug Ford's sort of authentic delivery on very clear, concise policy messages, into real support. Which is pretty impressive for someone who hasn't been in the role for very long and who didn't have a long time as leader to come up with an entirely new platform, come up with a new message, get to know all the candidates across the province, recruit a bunch of new candidates, sort out some of the corruption that had previously existed.
Tiffany, Mike Crawley alluded to it. I don't think that a different leader would have changed things dramatically. I don't know about you, but I think after 15 years, people were just sort of, okay, that's enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, 15 years ago, we came in on choose change, and then it was change that's working, forward together, forward. I think we knew that at this point it was going to be a change election. Yeah. I think that early on in February, we very much underestimated the competitiveness of the NDP in the process and where voters would turn in that change. So making the decision about a referendum on Ford at that point was a gamble that we didn't, I don't think, expect would result the way that it did.
And don't forget, in the past, the Liberals had really moved to the left. Kathleen Wynne has been a super progressive leftist
in the last
Liberal.
budget, for sure. Yeah.
And Andrea Horvath made the mistake in 2014 of trying to be a sort of a more centrist, reasonable, middle-of-the-road policy. This time she said, no, I'm going to be myself. I'm going to be a socialist NDP, and I'm going to go for that progressive left, and she kind of ate the Liberals' lunch.
And that was criticized by a lot of people when Andrea Horvath did that in the last election. So this is more better fit for her natural fit. Okay, we'll pause it there. Lots more to talk about. We'll be back with our strategists in a little bit. Dwight, I'll toss it back to you.
Yeah, we do have to save some for later, Rosie. We have people fanned out right across the province tonight in many key ridings. There are 18 ridings in Eastern Ontario. Adrian Harewood is in the Ottawa area riding of Nepean. Adrian, good evening.
Hi, Dwight. I'm here in Barrhaven, one of the western suburbs of Ottawa. I'm here in the riding of Nepean, which is the riding of Lisa MacLeod, the most senior and prominent Conservative politician in Eastern Ontario. You know, tonight there's high stakes for all three parties in Ottawa. For the last 15 years, this region has really been dominated by the Liberals, but tonight the Conservatives have their eye on 7 of the 9 ridings in the region, and they think they have a very good chance of winning a number of them. Particularly a riding, for example, a bellwether riding like Ottawa West Nepean, which has been long dominated by Bob Chiarelli, cabinet minister. Also, the Tories are looking at Orleans as well, which is the riding of Marie-France Lalonde. They believe that Cameron Montgomery has a very good chance of taking that one as well. For the NDP, they are trying to make a breakthrough. You know, for many, many years, the NDP have not had a representative from this region. And tonight, they believe that Joel Harden, a Labour and social activist, has a very good chance of deposing Yasser Naqvi, the long-time, very popular Liberal MPP in Ottawa Centre, who has been the representative for that riding since 2007. For the Liberals, tonight is really about survival. They're hoping that they can hold on to the couple of ridings. They're hoping that they won't lose all their cabinet members. And, well, they think that they're trying to see if they can avoid the blue wave that is kind of rolling across Eastern Ontario. Dwight, back to you.
Thank you, Adrian. And Amanda Pfeffer is in Ottawa Centre tonight with NDP candidate Joel Harden's supporters. What's happening there, Amanda?
Well, you just heard Adrian talking about the NDP fortunes. What a surprise we had as the NDP began this surge late in the campaign. And we became very concerned about, or the Liberals became very concerned about that center-left vote and what was going to happen in Liberal bastions like Ottawa Centre, Ottawa South. These are ridings that voted more than 50% of those ridings for the Liberal side. Will the NDP have a chance at convincing those Liberal voters to switch sides? This riding here had voted more than 50%, as Adrian mentioned, for Joel Harden. And it has a long time history of NDP support. In fact, for 2 decades, up until 1995, the NDP held this riding, so they want it back. There were more than 1,000 volunteers we heard out. They're still out for the next half hour, trying to deliver that vote to the polls and turn this riding, the first time in a couple of decades, back orange. And as we heard earlier in the show, if this riding can go, then maybe Andrea Horvath has been successful with her bid to try to convince those voters to turn toward the NDP.
Thank you, Amanda. That is Eastern Ontario. Let's go to the north now. The NDP also making a play in Northern Ontario, where there are some new ridings. Mike Wise is here taking a look at that. So, Mike, what are they?
Well, Dwight, 17 new ridings in play in Ontario today, and there are 2 new ridings in Northern Ontario. The government adding 2 ridings up there to better represent the North and to offer more representation for the Indigenous population. 2 ridings we're talking about here. I should say I'm showing results from the last election. We don't have any votes in yet. This is Mushkegowuk, James Bay, and on the west side we have Kiiwetinoong. This riding is one we may not be hearing from tonight. There are 7 ridings we're hearing from Elections Ontario that there have been problems voting with. They will be holding back the results in a number of them until everyone has had a chance to vote. We are hearing they may hold back the results from this riding until midnight. And I should say that is midnight Central Time, 1 a.m. Eastern. This riding, the largest in Ontario, is so large it spans 2 time zones. 294,000 kilometers. To give you a sense of perspective, you can fit all of Atlantic Canada, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island into that riding twice. Add a few more Prince Edward Islands. That's how big it is. 32,000 people. Send it back to you, Dwight.
I'm not sure our friends out there appreciated that comparison. Thank you, Mike. Let's take a closer look at the Northern Ontario story tonight. Wabgishik Rice is in the Nickel Belt. Wab, what's the story from there?
Well, Dwight, I'm in Valcarin, which is on the northern outskirts of Sudbury. We're at the election night headquarters of France Jelena. She's the NDP incumbent in the Nickel Belt. She's being challenged by the Liberals' Tay Budd and the PC's Joanne Cardwell. Jelena is a very popular MPP. She was first elected in 2007. Last election, last time around, 2014, she had something to the effect of 60% of the vote. She's the NDP's health critic, and she's seeking a 4th term in the Nickel Belt riding. Now, while this is very popular for the NDP, this riding, you can see this venue becoming more orange by the minute. Many eyes in this region are on a little farther south to the riding of Sudbury proper. Now that's where Liberal MPP Glenn Thibeault is hoping to maintain his seat against the NDP's Jamie West and the PC's Troy Crowder. So that's the situation here in Sudbury, Dwight.
All right, thank you, Wab. We'll check back in with you later. Now, Windsor was once a Liberal powerhouse, but voters punished that party back in 2014 and voted NDP. Well, tonight, the NDP is looking to expand on that into PC territory to the north. Jason Viao is in Windsor. Jason, Sarnia, Lambton, Chatham-Kent, and Lambton-Kent all went PC last time.
That's right, and those are all up for grabs, and this is a change election, Dwight. We've been hearing it at the top of the show, throughout the campaign, but that change, in a sense, has already arrived to southwestern Ontario, but it's quite divided, as you mentioned. Down in the extreme southwest, it's an NDP stronghold, both provincially and federally. It was Liberal provincially before that, but they expect to hang on to their seats here. They're confident in that, but in Windsor West, there is one thing to note. The Liberal candidate is quite strong, according to some, and he feels he's a contender. He's a local city councillor with a lot of support. If he can transfer that municipal support to provincial votes, who knows what could happen. But moving back up to those 3 PC ridings, the NDP feel they have a good shot in achieving those as well. Sarnia-Lambton, Chatham-Kent, Leamington, and Lambton-Kent, Middlesex. It's heavy rural ridings with middle-class folks there, so we'll see what happens. And it's also important to note that in Essex, though that is one of 7 polls that will be extended past 9 o'clock because of some of those unforeseen circumstances that arise tonight when it comes to the voting. So we'll send it back to you. Things here at the NDP camp for 2 candidates are expected to pick up after 9 o'clock. Dwight.
We've never had an election day where we've had some problems at the voting stations. Thank you for that, Jason. Safe injection sites, transit and daycare. There's no shortage of issues in this election. CBC asked voters to talk about what was important to them. Something that kept coming up, employment standards and minimum wage.
We chose to pay above the minimum wage because I wanted to pay what I understood to be a living wage in Toronto. It was very expensive and very scary. We're growing now, and I'm just so happy that everybody now has to pay that living wage.
I receive almost 50% less than my co-worker who are full-time. It's not fair. I believe in equal wage for equal work. I am Asuma Abdullahian, and this is my election story.
I will be voting for the candidate in the party that cares about employees and working people. My name is Jeline Pierce, and this is my election story.
Ontario's finances are one of the reasons voters are calling for change. While the Liberals increase minimum wage, the Tories are promising tax cuts, and the NDP is promising to spend more on education and daycare. Let's go back to Rosie and her panel of strategists to talk about that.
Okay, we actually have some questions from Facebook because we are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So to try and get people included before the results start coming in, I'm going to throw some of those at you. First one goes to you, Ginny. It's from Beth Myers-May, who asks on Facebook, it's a good question, it's one I have too, why couldn't the PC party manage to publish a fully costed platform?
So it depends what you mean by fully. So
yes.
There was a plan and it was fully costed. I think that what people want is promises. They want to know what a government's going to do. And Doug Ford has said quite clearly what he's going to do and what that would cost. What he didn't have was this thing called a fiscal outlook.
Yes.
But you know
all the numbers added up, where things were going, you had to
the state of the finances today, the state of the government's finances
Yes.
today, which really is kind of a question mark because the Liberals tried to tell us, the Auditor General, the Independent Auditor General said they were wrong. The NDP tried to kind of guess at it and had it in their platform. They were off, as it turns out, as well. So Doug Ford said, I don't know what kind of mess we have. I don't know how bad the finances are, so I'm not going to presume to tell you how I'll be able to deliver my promises in relation to those books until I open them up. And there hasn't been a government that's formed government that hasn't showed up and said, oh, things are way worse than we thought they were going to be. So, I mean,
that end part, I totally believe. The rest of it, I don't know. And only because if someone's saying that they're going to get rid of waste, and he has said he's going to do a line-by-line audit to get the sense of what you're saying, you sort of then want to know what does that mean for other things. And I think that's what the NDP tried to push, the idea that there were things that were going to be cut. We don't know. He, even as recently as yesterday, said he wasn't going to lay off anyone, but we don't know.
He has said he'll do a 4% across the board, every department cut. That equals $6 billion. Yeah. When you look in each department, that means hospitals being cut. That means nurses being fired. That means teachers not being hired. I mean, that's what a 4% across the board cut means. That's what austerity means. And that's why people know that they can't really afford Ford. And hopefully tonight we'll see them coming out in droves to stop that.
Except that when you look at things like corporate welfare, blank checks to businesses, the Green Energy Act contracts, some of these sweetheart deals that people have not been at all comfortable with, the average Ontarian will tell you they see tons of waste that we can get rid of.
Okay, next question is from Drake Morin. He asks, if Andrea Horvath falls short of government and forms official opposition, is that good enough for her to stay as leader, Kathleen?
Certainly. I mean, this will be the second best showing this party has ever done. We'll have, at the minimum, we're going to double our seats tonight. At the minimum, we're going to be official opposition. I mean, Andrea can be incredibly proud of the campaign and her campaign team, what she's run. And so, no, I think it's going to be a win for Andrea. I think she should be proud of building her caucus. And the party, I still believe we're going to form government tonight. I believe that's possible.
We've got 12 minutes. Just hold on to those hopes.
You get out there and vote. That's what I want people to get out there and vote, and then this is going to happen. But that said, even if it doesn't, the party's going to be in incredible shape going forward in terms of their resources, the ability to outreach, and they are going to be the progressive party in Ontario.
Although
and being able to stand up.
Isn't Doug Ford going to get rid of the per vote subsidy? Isn't that one of his promises?
Yeah, that might be. But I think that's something that Ontarians have a big problem with. But the Liberals and the NDP might not be so happy about. But I actually just
that would be a problem, I think, for both these parties if they're trying to position themselves.
It would be. But I agree with Kathleen. I think Jack Layton looked really good in 2011. You know, having a really strong showing for the NDP could be good for Andrea Horvath tonight. And there are some really strong candidates running.
So I know Kathleen Wynne has said she will stick around. I wouldn't imagine that would be for a very long time, especially if you guys don't hit that 8 seats, right? The official party status.
Yeah, well, I think first of all we'll have to see tonight whether she keeps her seat, and we'll have to move it forward from there. But I think that we'll likely be moving. My sense is it'll be a short order for when she could step down, and us to sort of get a sense of who we have in the House and what kind of interim leader we can.
And what kind of rebuilding has to be done? Because no matter what, that has to happen tonight, right? Starting tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. Ladies, thank you again. I'll throw it back to you, Dwight. Lots more analysis from them, of course, coming up in the hours ahead as we get ready for some results.
Oh, we're just minutes away, and we won't get results from 7 of the ridings until much later tonight. They're spread across the province, including one here in Toronto. That's where Talia Ricci is live tonight in the riding of York Southwestern. Now, Talia, polling hours have been extended in those ridings.
That's right, Dwight. We know that there are 9 polling locations in 7 electoral districts with extended hours this evening. That includes the seniors residence behind me. They'll be open till 9:45 this evening, as well as a few in southwestern Ontario, including York Simcoe and a location in northern Ontario as well. Now, in an email from Elections Ontario, they said that these interruptions were completely out of their control, and that the reasons for 4 of them were because of school lockdowns, and that 99.57% of all technology-enabled polls were up and running today, and that paper ballots were used if they weren't. Now, we spoke to several voters today, and a mixed reaction from them. Some people saying that it was a seamless process today to go out and vote and use that new technology. Other people, in person and on social media, did complain that there were some tech glitches that slowed them down today. Dwight.
All right, thank you for that, Talia. Now, the leaders of the NDP, PC, and Liberal parties have all cast their ballots, cameras in tow. Doug Ford greeted supporters on his way to mark his ex in Etobicoke this morning. Then Kathleen Wynne voted in her riding of Don Valley West in Toronto, and Andrea Horvath cast her vote more than a week ago in advanced polls in Hamilton. The fate
All right. We know that there's going to be some amazing results tonight that's really going to change not only what happens to these leaders, but also to the province. Mike Crawley, you've been covering Queen's Park, well, forever, basically. Riddle me this. What happens if Doug Ford doesn't get a majority tonight? If he gets a minority, would Progressive Conservatives be satisfied with that?
I think the knives will be out for Doug Ford very quickly if indeed they only win a minority, because that minority, it's hard to imagine how that minority government would survive past the first confidence vote. I think many PCs would see that as a loss, and they would very quickly blame that on Doug Ford. You know, second guessing, they'll start to say, did we pick the wrong leader? Did they run the wrong campaign? Doesn't matter what the reasons are. If Doug, you know, I think it's pretty clear. If Doug Ford does not get a majority, there's going to be some change in the PC party pretty quickly.
And would that change come from someone who was reluctant to concede leadership to him when we spent those many hours together back in March? I mean, would it be Christine Elliott, do you think, who would be step up to the plate? I know it's early to ask that question, but just play with me here.
It seems to be the obvious choice. I mean, look, she came within a whisker of winning that leadership race. Really, she won the popular vote, if that matters. You know, no consolation. You could win the popular vote here tonight and still lose the election. So, look, I think people would turn to Christine Elliott within the PC party because there was a feeling among, you know, her many supporters that Doug Ford was not the right person. If Doug Ford wins, then he was the right person for the party. If Doug Ford does not win a majority, then they will decide that he was not the right person to lead the party in this situation, and the blame game will happen immediately. Rosemary.
Okay, we won't get too depressing for all the people who are supporting Doug Ford because the results haven't come in yet, but it is a remarkable turnaround what this party has managed. You know, they had a leader with some serious allegations of sexual misconduct back in January, had to step down, thought he might stay in the race, then pulled out. A leadership race, and as Ginny said earlier, a very short time to get ready for the election campaign. How have they managed to pull this off? Because whatever happens tonight, it is remarkable that they were managed to get everything going and be this well positioned to form government.
Look, one of the things that I thought was the most remarkable was Conservatives who were telling me in early March that it would be the worst thing that could possibly happen to their party to have Doug Ford be the leader. After March 10th, you know, maybe they mourned for a day or two, but they were very quickly on board. Yeah. And interestingly enough, you know, Doug Ford brought onto his team some staff that came from all of the different leadership camps. Also, midway through the campaign, and Rosemary, I think this was a really key turning point for the Progressive Conservatives. For the first couple of weeks, they were showcasing Doug Ford only, Doug Ford all the time, and then they realized they need to show that he's part of a team. They brought out Caroline Mulrooney, Christine Elliott appearing at events, and that coincided with the stopping of their slide in the polls. So I think that was a key moment to say that this party is not built just on Doug Ford alone.
Okay,
Rosemary?
Lots more to talk about throughout the evening. Mike Crawley's with us, thank goodness. Thanks for that, Mike. And Dwight, I'll toss it back to you.
And of course, this election is all about you, the voter. Farah Morelli is in York Region tonight in the middle of a viewing party that we've brought together, Farah.
That's right, Dwight. The crowd is growing here at the Vaughan Civic Centre Resource Library. I'm joined now by a couple of local residents who've come out to watch the results roll in. Jason and Rachel Pierce, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having us.
So, Jason, why was it important for you both to come out here and watch these election results roll in?
I find this is one particular election where you would think it would be more polarizing than it is, and maybe I just haven't been chatting with the right people. But what I've been finding in this election, it's not the most spirited election that I've seen. It seems like everyone is running against someone instead of running for something. Mr. Ford was running against Bob Ray, oddly enough. Ms. Horvath was running against Mr. Ford. Kathleen Wynne was running against time, arguably. And I didn't feel a terribly compelling vision from anyone, although to be fair, part of it may be that, like many Canadians, I'm distracted by the circus south of the border, and no one's being investigated for collusion or there's no Stormygate. But ultimately, I wanted to be a little more connected to the process. I live around the corner from this lovely Vaughan Civic Centre Library, and I was here earlier today and I found it was a public event, so we decided to come and check it out.
Great. And Rachel, I understand that you have been watching the election especially closely. What's been the most interesting or exciting thing that you've seen so far?
I find it very interesting how a lot of the candidates, like Kathleen Wynne and Doug Ford, have had things happen to them lately. Like Doug Ford, his brother, died recently. After he was mayor, Kathleen Wynne went through a lot of lawsuits, emails, and threats when she was premier. So this election has been very interesting compared to the other ones that I've seen. So yeah, I've been looking forward to it.
Just a couple more years until you can vote, hey?
Yeah.
Vote 8?
Yeah, I'm probably going to vote, yeah.
Awesome. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. And Jason, thank you so much for being part of this event. If you are in Vaughan, if you are in the York region, come on down to the Vaughan Civic Centre Resource Library. We'll be here as the results roll in through the night.
And don't get cynical, Rachel. You haven't seen that many elections yet. Thank you for that, Farah. They are the leaders of our political parties, and one will be declared premier tonight, but they're also human beings, and it's that more human side that I was trying to get at when the Liberal and NDP leaders joined me for some carpool karaoke. We took a ride around their hometowns of Richmond Hill and Hamilton. Now, PC leader Doug Ford was also invited along, but he turned us down. We'll start with what do you think of this setup?
It's great. It's really cool, and it's a great idea to do this kind of a thing. This is crazy. Yeah.
Do you get a lot of days off? I guess you can't right now because you're in a campaign. But if you did have some downtime, what would we find Andrea Horvath up to?
I'll sit and have a cup of tea and curl up with a book.
Fiction, nonfiction?
I like to read fiction because it takes me away.
When you get a break, like what do you like to do?
Perfect time off is being outside. That's sort of the first thing, yep. And with people I love.
This is the song that is the one that they play at my events.
So this one I can get you to sing to.
This is the campaign.
You know the words to this one. All right.
I am not a good singer, Dwight.
Neither am I.
I'm young and wild. Okay. Maybe not so young anymore, but some people would call me wild still.
The thing about Bruce Springsteen is he gives you the music that in your head you can run away, right? You can just get the hell out and look at it from a distance and say, okay, this is okay and this is right?
Rapid fire time, are you ready?
I'm ready.
It's coffee or tea?
Tea. Green tea. That's why I hesitated.
That's my favorite too. Pancakes or waffles?
Oh, pancakes.
Waffles.
Sweet or salty?
Oh, how can I choose?
Both.
Do you have a favorite junk food snack and indulgence?
I gotta say chips.
Is a cappuccino.
Cats or dogs?
Cats, but I'm allergic to them.
Dogs, although I used to be a cat person.
Morning person or night owl?
Morning. It's the best time to run.
See, I can do both. Hopefully not back to back. Outside the liquor store. And so, my perspective on beer and wine in corner stores. I just thought this was a cool
that's
song.
a good. When you're driving, do you play the music loud?
I do.
Do you rock out?
I have to say I do.
Don't have a lot of regrets.
You didn't do the theater.
But one of the regrets is I didn't do the theater side.
What's the one with Yul Brynner? The King
and I.
Yes,
I'm gonna wash that man right out of my hair. The Sound of Music.
Yes.
You know, a female deer, red
a drop of golden sun. You have been running all your life for elections.
Pretty much. 20 years last year.
Wow, has it been that long?
20 years last year, yeah.
Warm face, warm hands, warm feet, oh, wouldn't it be lovely?
Your mom would have been proud of that rendition. Yes, she would have. I really appreciate you doing this.
Thanks,
That was a lot of fun.
My pleasure.
I enjoyed hanging out with you. Thank you so much. That was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Dwight. Thank you very much.
I really enjoyed doing that with you.
Very fun.
So if you think when Doug Ford, if he becomes premier, that he'll be more accessible to us, because he wouldn't have some fun?
He would have been good at that, actually.
So
I'm sure he'll do it if he becomes premier. Hopefully he'll be more accessible with journalists, too, and answer a few more questions.
Right?
He'll get used to us if that happens. Lots to go, though, before we know that.
Yes, there is now the likability of the leaders played such a big role in this campaign, especially for both Doug Ford and Kathleen Wynne.
And it is a test tonight of the Ford brand as much as the Progressive Conservative brand, and whether Andrea Horvath has come through a part here where now everybody knows her a little better, recognizes her, and maybe they're willing to take a chance.
Yeah. Third time may be the charm. We're looking at the countdown clock. We have just seconds now until the polls close and the drama really gets underway.
Is Liberal rule in Ontario about to end? Will the PCs capitalize on voter frustration, or will the NDP surge to power?
Let's find out.
I really don't believe in any of the stuff they're offering.
I'm so disappointed. I'm not going to touch anybody.
Angry, fed up, and hungry for change. Ontario votes.
NDP, NDP. Go, you got it. We're gonna go.
The odds have always been against me.
Even before the campaign began, there was drama.
A couple hours ago, I learned about troubling allegations.
A leader cast off by his own party. And his replacement, a man from a family with deep political roots.
Elected.
Elected. The polarizing frontrunner with a populist message.
We're going to put up a big sign on the border. Ontario is open for business.
Doug Ford sounds like Donald Trump, and that's because he is like Donald Trump.
Deeply unpopular and under attack, Liberal leader Kathleen Wynne tried something different.
Here's what I want to say about the last 5 years. Sorry, not sorry.
But it wasn't enough to stop the polls from plunging.
Something special is happening in Ontario!
And Andrea Horvath took aim.
Kathleen Wynne has created a crisis.
God forbid the NDP ever get in. They will destroy our province.
So, who did you choose to lead Ontario next? Welcome to an historic night in provincial politics. This is CBC's election special, Ontario Votes. We are about to find out who Ontario's next premier will be. I'm Dwight Drummond.
And I'm Rosemary Barton. We're coming to you live tonight from Studio 42 in Toronto at the CBC Broadcasting Centre. Polls are now closed. Results are coming in. You'll be able to see them at the bottom of your screen, riding by riding through the night. And don't forget, we're also live right now on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook.
124 seats are up for grabs. 63 are needed for a majority. The Progressive Conservatives haven't won an election in this province since 1999. Is tonight the night, and will we have a majority government?
And remember, the New Democrats have only ever won once before. Can they make that jump from third party to government tonight? The Liberals, well, their party status could end tonight if they don't win enough seats, and that would mean 8.
All right, our reporters are live right across the province and at party headquarters tonight to bring you the story and help tell you what it all means for Ontario. Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley is at PC headquarters in Etobicoke. And Mike, does it look like Doug Ford supporters are preparing for a big party there tonight?
Absolutely, Dwight. The hall has filled up here. There's about 500 chairs set out, capacity for 1,500. A lot of energy in this room. And more importantly, the Conservative strategists that I have spoken to over the last few hours are feeling quite good about a number of things. So they get, all of the parties in fact get, every 15 minutes, they get numbers from Elections Ontario, not just of how many people who voted, but exactly who has voted. So they're actually able to compare this on their database with their identified supporters, strike off who has voted that was a supporter for them, and they can move around resources and say, hey, we need to make sure that people are voting in that riding that we're chasing after. So they're feeling good about that. They're feeling good about what the turnout is looking like to be. It's going to be around 50-51%. They were afraid there was going to be some sort of a surge of millennial voters, perhaps. So number of signs looking good for the Progressive Conservatives, making them fairly confident they're going to get the majority that they haven't had in the last 4 straight elections. Dwight?
Thank you, Mike. Now, the NDP were far behind the front-running PC party before campaigning began. Then, the polls showed the New Democrats surging in popularity, and that's when the attacks came from both sides. Chris Glover is live at NDP headquarters in Hamilton tonight. Chris, a jump in popularity and scrutiny. Will voters see Andrea Horvath as too radical?
That's the big question. And of course, what the PCs in particular tried to paint the NDP as, they tried to paint them as a bunch of radical misfits. And that was a refrain that you heard from Doug Ford, especially in the last few days of this campaign, as the leaders, those two leaders, were so tight in the popular opinion polls. They did, the NDP, have a slight stall in their support. As you mentioned, they were surging there about halfway through, and they had a lot of momentum, but that did start to stall. I just moments ago spoke with the NDP campaign director about that stall. Here's what he had to say.
Well, I think it was the incredibly negative attacks coming at us from, I'd like to say from the right and the left, but they were all from the right. Even the Liberals were attacking us from the right. And a very heavy TV buy, a lot of fear-mongering, and it had some effect. After 7 days of that, though, to still entering the final stages of the campaign tied, and now it's about what happens today. And we're pretty excited about what can happen today.
All right, thank you for that, Chris. Now, that scoreboard at the bottom of your screen, that's what you're going to be looking at all night. That's the scoreboard that will tell you how the parties, whether leading or elected. We'll continue to check on that. We have some early results coming our way, so let's head right over to Mike Wise and see what he has for us. Mike.
Well, Dwight, let's take a look at what some of these results are. We'll call up the map of Ontario to see where things are. We'll take a look. Simcoe Grey, Jim Wilson, a long-time Tory backbencher. No surprise here, off to a very comfortable early lead in Simcoe Grey. Let's take a look at some other early results. We've got Bruce Grey, Owen Sound, again, Bill Walker, another very traditional area of Ontario that supports the Progressive Conservatives. Slight lead here, not surprising at this point. Let's continue to see what else we're seeing in early results. Temiskaming, Cochrane, Northern Ontario, slim lead for the NDP here. The Liberals in third place here as well. Again, another not surprise, Sarnia Lambton. This a bit of a surprise as well. The NDP were looking to pick up support in southwestern Ontario. Sarnia Lambton, Bill Bailey was holding that for the PCs. A very early lead, slim lead for Kathy Alexander, but NDP making some inroads there possibly. Oxford, another area of traditional PC support. Ernie Hardiman, that was actually two results ago, his nephew up in the Northern Ontario, Niagara Falls as well. Wayne Gates, early lead, and another NDP area of support. Chatham, Kent Leamington again. This southwestern Ontario, slim start here as well. This is an area the NDP was trying to see if they could get some support into as well, but the PCs under lead there. Don Valley East, one of the Liberal ridings we're looking at as well. Liberal Cabinet Minister Michael Couteau, very slim lead here as well, but the Liberals on the board in Toronto. Let's go up near the Eastern Ontario. John Yakubuski, very sizable lead there, long-term PC member there as well. Ottawa Vanier, another one of those key Ottawa ridings we're watching. Natalie DesRosiers with a lead there as well. Liberals with a lead out in the Ottawa area. Those are some early results that we have at this point, Dwight.
All right, thank you for that, Mike Wise. Now, once again, that scoreboard at the bottom of your screen, it shows the number of seats in which candidates are leading or elected. You will see them go back and forth throughout the night. 124 seats up for grabs, 63 is the threshold for a majority government, and 8 seats to receive official party status. And I'm saying that because that's something the Liberals are looking at closely tonight. Lisa Shing is live at Liberal Party headquarters in North York. And Lisa, the Liberals had 55 seats last time. Only a few may be left by the end of tonight.
Only a few possibly, Dwight, so we're keeping an eye on that. The room is starting to fill up. Supporters are trickling in, but still largely a pretty subdued mood here at the Liberal campaign headquarters. And as you said, the goal really is to see how many Liberal seats they can pick up this time around. 8 really is the threshold for official party status. And if they don't get to that number, essentially it means that no funding for things like research as well as staffing. They don't get designated time to speak in the legislature. But again, not all is lost. They are in effect still a party. They can still be vocal. They can still hold press conferences and really try to get that attention, Dwight. So we'll be keeping an eye on things here at the Liberal headquarters throughout the night.
And of course, we will check back with you. Thank you for that, Lisa. Eric Grenier is our CBC poll analyst, and he's tracking the numbers for us tonight. What do you have, Eric?
Well, we're seeing that it is a close race between the PCs and the New Democrats in the popular vote. You can see that the PCs are now at 40%. They're above this 37.6% threshold that has historically been the minimum for a majority government. That's what Bob Rae had in 1990. But look at the NDP at 36.2%, not too far behind, despite the fact that we're seeing a bit of an edge, a bit of a sizable edge for the PCs in the seat count. Liberals down to 17%. They're down roughly 20 points from the last election, so they're not having a good night as the early returns are coming in. The Greens at 5%. Now let's look at the seat change so far since the results are coming in. Look at that Liberal number. They're down 30 seats already. Both the PCs and the NDP are picking up. We see the PCs have picked up 18 seats. They need to gain 28 seats to get to a majority government, so they're off to a good start. The New Democrats up 11 seats. They need to win 41 seats, need to gain 41 seats to get to that 63 seat. And look at that, the Greens up 1. If that's going to be holding throughout the night, Mike Schreiner, leader of the Green Party, that would be a good result for the Greens. They really want to get that 1 seat. But this Liberal number, this Liberal drop of 30 seats, that is the story. That is what is going to produce these gains for the NDP and the PCs.
Yeah, you were right about the Greens. They may get a breakthrough tonight, but look at those numbers. Right now, the PCs leading or elected in 51 ridings, 28 for the Liberals, 28 for the NDP, only 5 for the Liberals and 1 for the Green. Let's head back over to Rosie and the panel.
Yeah, and early numbers still, so we've got a ways to go before everyone starts reporting in. But let's just get some quick reaction from our strategist, Kathleen Monk, Ginny Moffitt, and Tiffany Gooch. First thoughts on what you're seeing there, Kathleen?
Early days, we're hearing, early hours, I should say.
Early minutes, really.
Early minutes, really. We're hearing that there are lineups still. So just a reminder, if you're in line and happen to be watching CBC, which I'm not really sure that would happen. It could happen, stream it. Yeah. You know, you still get to vote if you're in line as of 9 o'clock. So looking very promising. We've already, you know, increased our seat count. Still looking for some of those ones to pull through, particularly the Bramptons, watching for Scarborough, and watching for some of those bellwether ridings like Peterborough.
Okay.
Jay? So far, the pollsters are having a pretty good night. This is tracking sort of as predicted. Yeah. So if I'm Eric over there, I'm breathing a bit of sigh of relief. But it's early days, and we'll see if that Liberal number can creep up. That's probably going to be beneficial to the PCs. Yes. If it really bottoms out, you might see the NDP going up in seat count. So that's what I'm watching.
That Green number is pretty interesting too, because that would be historic. How about you, Tiffany?
Yeah, listen, it's we knew what kind of night this was going to be for the Liberals, and looking at those numbers, it's tough, but exciting to sort of see who's pulling through, and hoping that it continues to creep up over the night.
When 5 is good news, it's a different ball game altogether.
It's not 0, it's something.
All right, we'll check back with you ladies in a little bit. Dwight, I'll throw it back to you, and I'll come join you in a sec.
Yes, the pollsters have been predicting, and it's kind of good when they get it right, as you guys were saying. Let's head back over to Eric Grenier with a smile on his face.
Well, that's because we're looking at this very interesting numbers as they're coming in. This is very early. We're getting these results. You usually don't have this in election night. But when we're talking about this majority threshold, 63 seats, right now, PCs are leading or elected in 63. That's what they need for a majority government. They're at the threshold as we speak, and we still have 19 seats to report. So this will be key to see if the PCs will be able to hold this. Look at this. Already 2 seats that we expect would go PC. They won them in 2014. We're not even hearing from them yet. So that means that the PCs, if you take the seats where they're leading right now and ones that they won in 2014 that we haven't heard yet, they're over that majority threshold mark. So the PCs are off to the races. This is the finish line, 63 seats. And right now, PCs are leading or elected in 63 ridings.
this happening a little faster than you would have thought, Eric?
Well, just in terms of, yes, the vote.
We are just starting the show.
This new system, we had heard about the issues that might have been happening with the voting, but clearly Elections Ontario is delivering on getting some results into us.
All right.
That's good.
I know that Mike Crawley's out at PC headquarters, and I'm sure he wants to get in on the conversation right now. Jubilation there already, Mike, even in early minutes?
Wow, Dwight, just the energy in this room just like accelerated, it exploded. When they hit that 63 mark, people standing up, cheering, waving their signs, they feel it already. And it's just come so fast and so furious. They're definitely, you know, feeding off of the pace at which this is coming. One thing I'm noticing too is that the PCs are winning in the places that they needed to. They're winning in Mississauga and they're winning in Scarborough. So this is looking very good for the PCs at this stage.
All right. Thank you, Mike Crawley. We have looked at all the numbers, and our CBC Decision Desk is ready to make a projection tonight. And we are projecting Ontario will have a progressive conservative government. They are out of the wilderness where they have been for some 15 years now. Ford Nation, province-wide, Rosie.
Yeah, this is a big win for Doug Ford. Not only a validation of him, a guy who's going to be a first-time provincial politician and also first-time premier, but also the Progressive Conservative Party coming back, as you say, after 15 years, not forming government. And remember, a leader who has been in place for really just a number of weeks, if you think about it. A big win for them tonight. You can see them celebrating already.
And the question is, as we look at the party, they're out in Etobicoke tonight. How did we get here? Eric and Mike are here to help us explain how this all happened. They're setting up now to going through the numbers, but as we look at Ford Nation headquarters in Etobicoke North tonight, the celebration, what's this, 15 minutes?
15 minutes
after the polls have closed.
Incredible.
Let's go head over to Eric and Mike.
Yeah, this is coming very fast on election night, and this is because the PCs have made a big jump in the popular vote. Let's look at where they stand. They stand at 40.5%, well over the 37.6% historical threshold for majority government. The New Democrats, though, at 35%. This is going to be a very good result for them. They've only twice been over the 30% mark in all of their history. But the story is that the Liberals have dropped down to 18%, down roughly 20 points from the last election. They've lost over half of all the support that they had in 2014, and the Greens at 5%. Now let's look at the seat change, because this is what's really happening. You have the Liberal number just collapsing. They've dropped 56 seats from where they were at dissolution with the new electoral boundaries. PCs have picked up 39. They only needed 28 to reach a majority threshold. They've got right now 39 that they are leading and elected in right now that they didn't have at the dissolution. But the New Democrats also up 16, and again, that Green seat for the Green Party, Mike Schreiner holds on in Guelph. That'll be a historic result for them, a big win for them if they can get that one seat. But this drop for the Liberals, this is what is producing both these gains for the NDP, but particularly for the PCs.
Fort went blue as well, Eric?
It does seem that way, because what we're looking at is that the PCs are benefiting. They're winning the majority of these seats that the Liberals are dropping as the results are coming in.
Okay.
And we can talk about where those seats are happening as well. You know, we're at 72 point. If we take a look at the overview of the province, you see, you know, a lot of progressive conservative blue in the southern part of the province. We're at that 72 on the bottom of the screen. We've talked about 63 being the number. We've projected a progressive conservative government. The question of whether it's a majority or a minority, we haven't settled yet. That's because there are a number of races that are still too close to call at this point. We'll look at some on the board. Kenora, Rainier River, Brampton. Kenora, Rainier River, surprising to see it blue at this point, but just 10 votes separating the PCs from the NDP. Brampton East, the PCs with a 16-vote lead over at this point. As more polls start reporting, we could see these flip back and forth. That would change the numbers down on the ground. Our decision desk is going to want to wait to see some of these tight races settle a little bit more before we get more confident in making that call for the majority or minority at this point. Dwight.
All right, thank you, Mike. We have to go back out to PC headquarters right now with Mike Crawley. That's where the party is. And Mike, we have to ask you if Doug Ford gets the credit for this. Rosie just said he's just been in this job as the leader for weeks now.
Absolutely. All of the second guessers, the people who said that Doug Ford wouldn't be able to take his popularity in Toronto, to the fact that, you know, he came so close to actually losing that that PC leadership race. All the naysayers, the people who said that he didn't run a good campaign, Doug Ford is going to be the premier of this province. And so, you know, they ran a winning campaign. No more second guessing.
This must be, Mike, I would imagine, a huge relief too, right? Because this was the chance to come back. Yes. And if it didn't happen tonight, I'm not sure what the evaluation would have been. So there must be excitement, but also relief.
Yeah, but they were pretty confident, but a little bit nervous, and so sure, a big weight off of their shoulders. You know, the PCs have spent a long time in the political wilderness here in Ontario, 15 years of not being in government, and you know, they had the magical touch tonight. They're winning in places that they had to win in. You know, it looks like they're leading even in southwestern Ontario, where there was supposed to be this NDP wave. So. You know, they ran the right campaign, and the provincial mood seemed to be in favor of Progressive Conservative Party led by Doug Ford.
And you said they ran the right campaign. They also got a lot of criticism for the way they ran this campaign. No media bus, limited access to the media, no real platform, a costed platform. These are things that parties don't usually do and have success, and they've been able to pull it off even with that tonight.
Yeah, so they broke the rules, but I guess it shows that, you know, if you're popular enough, it just doesn't matter. We were commenting a lot about how they didn't even really make an effort to make their media availabilities work for television. They were sometimes just held in hotel meeting rooms against blue curtains, but they, you know, managed to get their message out in other ways. They use social media in a really clever way. They also have a really good organization on the ground in terms of voter ID. Okay, back to you, Dwight.
All right, thank you very much for that, Mike. They're continuing to look at the numbers, and we have looked at the numbers, and the CBC decision desk is ready to make another call tonight. And the call is that we will have a provincial government, a majority government for the Progressive Conservatives in the province of Ontario tonight. That is the call, a majority government, Ford Nation, right across the province. Doug Ford has pulled it off, Rosie.
Yeah, and if Ontarians obviously wanted change, they decided to go with someone that they didn't know, they weren't sure about, but they wanted to give him a chance. And so that is all due credit, certainly to Doug Ford and to the Progressive Conservative sort of machine that was behind him that picked that up. Lots of questions going forward. This province is about to look really different as soon as he gets into office.
We are going in a different direction after tonight, so how did he do it? Let's head back over to Eric and Mike.
Well, the PCs, they are doing very well in the popular vote. They're at 40%. They're over that majority threshold, and that's why it's one of the reasons why we can project that they will form a majority government. The New Democrats, 35%, strong result for them. They've only twice been over that 30% mark in all of their history. But the big story is because of this Liberal drop in support, they've dropped to 18.5%. That is historically the worst they've ever been. 21.8% in 1923. That was their previous low mark. They're well below that. The Greens at 5%. Now let's look at the seat change since the last election and when the legislature lifted. Look at this Liberal number, down 57 seats. They're only at 7 on the board. This is because the PCs have picked up 37. They only needed 28. They're well above that. And the New Democrats, good night for them, though, up 19 seats. And, of course, Mike Schreiner in Guelph, he's leading there, 1 seat. That's a historic result for the Green Party. But the PCs winning those Liberal seats, and a lot of them in the GTA.
That's right. We've got to talk about that part of the story right now. As we call up the map of the province, Doug Ford said when he was running for the leadership of the Progressive Conservatives, he could deliver the city of Toronto support in the GTA. Let's take a closer look at the area, and you can see he is winning a number of seats in the city of Toronto proper. Let's take a look at some of the details where they are ahead. These were Liberal strongholds: Don Valley East, Denzelman and Wong. Slim lead at this point, but Michael Coteau, a Liberal cabinet minister, in second place in this riding. Let's take another look out in the east, Scarborough-Guildwood. We've talked about the volatility here. This one has just flipped. Again, a very slow lead there as well. Mitzi Hunter, advanced education minister. This we've just seen flipping back since we've been on air talking about this as well. Let's look at another seat as an example. Kingisurma, this is Etobicoke Centre, the heart of so-called Ford Nation in the city of Toronto, Etobicoke, where both Rob Ford, Doug Ford have their base of support. Ahead there, we have one more graphic to show you as well. We have now, the CBC Decision Desk has projected Doug Ford will comfortably win his seat in Etobicoke North. So a number of breakthroughs in the 416, key tonight for the Progressive Conservatives winning that, or projected to win that majority government. Remember, they hadn't been elected in a general election in the Toronto area since 1999.
Yeah, not in this century. Right now, leading or elected in 69 ridings, 39 for the NDP. And take a look at that Liberal number at the bottom of your screen. That's where they need to stay for official party status. And looks like we might have a breakthrough with the Greens. Let's head back out to Mike Crawley. He's with one of the architects behind this win tonight. Mike.
Hi, folks. I'm with Michael Diamond. He is the campaign director for the Ontario PC Party. He was also the campaign manager for Doug Ford in his win over the leadership. So 2 for 2, Michael. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How did you do it?
You know, look, we had one. Doug Ford had a message that resonated with Ontarians. And as they were saying earlier, it's been a long time in a general election since the Progressive Conservative Party has won seats in Toronto. Tonight, it looks like we've done that in abundance. So that was huge for us. That's why Doug was such the right leader for the party at the right time. And it paid off dividends today. We had a great team and a great slate of candidates also.
Now, going into this campaign, though, the lead that you had in the polls was a lot bigger, and you saw that get whittled away through the course of the campaign. Did that get you a little bit worried?
Look, we stayed focused on our plan, and we presented our policy agendas. We didn't react. We stayed focused on what we wanted to talk about, and that was lower hydro rates, cleaning up the mess at Hydro One, reducing taxes and the burden on hardworking Ontarians.
Okay, so that's Michael Diamond, the campaign director for the Doug Ford Ontario PC campaign. Back to you, Dwight.
Thank you for that, Mike. There will be a drastic change in the direction of this province and where we are heading. Let's head over to the panel and Rosie.
All right, Jenny, it's your night, so you get to start it off. First of all, I don't think I've ever seen an election get called that fast. 21 minutes for us to declare a majority government. It was a little more definitive than I thought it would be, I have to say.
It's definitive, it's decisive. Some of this speed might be attributable to Elections Ontario updating their systems, but it's a really exciting day. I mean, this is a really big change. We knew people wanted change. We just weren't sure what kind of change they wanted, and they've told us. They want a change that means smaller government, more affordability. Government's not the answer to every question. Raising their taxes isn't the answer to every problem the government has. They've spoken very, very clearly, and Doug Ford has a really strong mandate, so I'm excited.
What do you think is going through his head? I know that's a hard question, but what do you think he's thinking tonight? There must be a little bit of, oh, God, now I got to do this, because that is always the thing. You make these promises, you want this job, and then you get it, and you gotta pony up.
Yeah, I saw him sitting around his pseudo cabinet table a couple weeks ago when he brought some of his star candidates around him, and he looked pretty comfortable because I think he knows he has a really strong team. He's got, like I said, a really strong mandate. The platform, you know, people can knock it for the lack of fiscal outlook piece, but it's pretty clear. It's 5 priority areas: hydro, affordability, business environment, accountability, and the 5th one's escaping me, but it's, you know, it should be, you know, they can hit the ground running, and I think on things like delivering on tax cuts, that's something they can do in the first year.
Yeah, what do you think that would be their first move, if you were to guess? Yeah, go ahead.
He's got to bring his team together. He's got to form cabinet.
Yeah.
So you get your transition team together, and you meet. I mean, he'll hold a media. He'll give a speech tonight. He'll hold a media availability tomorrow morning, and then he'll get a small group of people, usually people that are experienced in government. That's how you bring onto your transition team, to give you a sense of what needs to get done. You sit down with the public service really early, the people who are going to support you in getting together your team. And then you start to make calls to those cabinet. I think we'll have a cabinet sworn in before Canada Day.
Okay. Kathleen, so not exactly what you wanted, but still good.
So some great pickups. I'm seeing my good friend Merritt Stiles in Davenport. Looks like doing well in Hamilton, Ancaster, Dundas. So some really good news stories. Chandra Pasma in Ottawa, West Nepean. So these, I mean, still polls have to come out, but like it's looking good. And what I do know is, if we take the lesson that we learned out of Toronto when Rob Ford was the mayor there, what it did do was it mobilized the progressive community and it mobilized progressives throughout the GTA to work against that austerity kind of agenda that he had. And I hope that what happens here in the province here. I mean, I'm getting texts tonight from friends going, oh my God, I'm moving to PEI. How do I get out? I don't think that's what we need to do. I think that we have a strong opposition now with Andrea Horvath as opposition opposition leader, almost doubling her MPPs, and we need to work and mobilize as progressives, as the Progressive Party in the Queen's Park right now, to fight this agenda.
Well, to hold the government to account and make sure you're asking the right questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at 8 on the board, which is decent.
Yes, this is where we expected to be hovering around, or we're hoping for. But I think this conversation of a majority government is not what we were hoping for. No. I think that there was a conversation we were having in this past week of a government that could be held accountable and checks and balances, especially with a team that didn't come forward with a plan. So it's hard to even know what you're holding them accountable to. And so I think this is at the beginning of I think a challenging time forward for us.
Okay. I'll leave it there. Come back, though. There's lots more to talk about as we dig into the numbers. Throw it back to you, Dwight.
Certainly a historic night here as the Greens may have a breakthrough, finally get into the Ontario legislature. Liberals hovering around that official party status. But it's that 72 that we're looking at right now for the Progressive Conservatives. Doug Ford promised that he would deliver Toronto for the PCs. The GTA is a vote-rich region, and Mike Wise has a look at some pickups in the 905, the ring around Toronto and Mississauga.
That's right. This area had a lot of Liberal red leading into this, but if you look on the map, you see just all the blue that's around here. I want to focus in on what's happened in Mississauga, just west of the city of Toronto right now. Mississauga Lakeshore, Rudy Gazzetto in the lead here as well. This is Ontario's Finance Minister, Charles Sousa. He had an endorsement from Mississauga's mayor, although she then went ahead and later that afternoon endorsed Doug Ford for premier as well. That endorsement not happening, helping him. Maybe Rudy it's happening tonight. Let's look elsewhere in Mississauga. Mississauga, Malton, Deep Back-Anon lead at this point as well. Another riding in Mississauga. Streetsville, again, we've declared this, projected pickup for the PCs in this seat, defeating Bob Delaney there as well. And let's check in. We can make history right now. The CBC Decision Desk projecting that Mike Schreiner will be elected in Guelph. The Green Party will now officially have one seat, their breakthrough seat in the Ontario legislature.
Yes, and maybe in the debates, too.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, during the debate, there were a lot of Green Party activists outside the debate that was held here at the CBC protesting because they felt that they should have had a voice at that debate. Our reasoning was you don't have a seat, you don't get a voice. That was sort of what the media consortium decided. So presumably this would mean that next time around they do. Guelph is sort of a hotbed of environmentalism. You know, it's people, younger people who really care about those issues. So if they were going to make a breakthrough tonight, it was definitely going to be here with that leader. Sometimes that can have a snowball effect, but not always, right? No. Elizabeth May has the one seat, has never managed to break through further. But it is, for the Green sign, a sign, I think, that there is, for the Green Party, right, a sign that there is some openness to their agenda, to some of their ideas. And so, you know, maybe they'll be able to build on that. Yeah, I
interviewed Mike a few times throughout this campaign, and he was feeling really confident. One of the questions tonight, and you can speak to this, and we also want to bring in back Bashi Capellas on this, the machine from Ottawa, that PC machine, did they play a role in this and coming here and helping the Doug Ford campaign, Bashi?
Hey, Dwight. Yeah, they most definitely did. And actually a lot of, and Rosie will know all about this, a lot of people who were heavily involved in the last not as successful federal election for Stephen Harper were in this campaign. Some names that a lot of sort of political insiders will know, like Jenny Byrne. People definitely will know her name. She ran the campaign for Stephen Harper. She was involved in this. Corey Tenike, who ran communications for Stephen Harper's campaign. He also did the same for Doug Ford, much more successfully so. And I can also say that I've been in touch with some people who are with Andrew Scheer. He has not been watching the results very closely until the end. He was hosting an event for his son at his official residence. But obviously a lot of happiness from the federal Conservatives right now with this result. They had been expecting a PC win. They didn't know if it would be a majority for sure, and definitely very happy. He'll be sending out a tweet sometime soon.
Probably not. They probably, I mean, they could be happy to have an ally, certainly in Ontario, and someone that they can sort of help give them some support. But it is worth pointing out that conventional wisdom in this province, and in many others, but in this province, means that generally a government in this province stays one way and they vote another way and the other way. So this doesn't mean, oh, Andrew Scheer is absolutely going to win the next federal election. Far from it. But it does allow them to build some alliances and sort of support one another in Ontario. And of course, course, it makes the Prime Minister's job slightly more complicated.
Yes.
He'll be able to do it, but it makes it slightly more complicated, which then obviously helps the federal Conservatives.
The relationship is going
right.
to change with this province.
It's going to change. There's a lot of things that Doug Ford doesn't like that the Prime Minister promotes. Scrapping the carbon tax would be the first sort of bone of contention. You heard Vashi talk about that earlier. That is going to be an issue for them. Some of the changes that he's going to make around business regulations. He wants to lower the gas by 10 cents. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Where is that money going to come from? So there's lots of questions like that will have to happen. But listen, the Prime Minister is managing right now, as we speak, a complicated relationship with the President of the United States. I'm sure he'll be able to handle Doug Ford.
Right, the G7. Now, you know, the Liberals positioned themselves in the center in this province, and the big question was, where would their votes go? Who would get the share of that vote? And Eric, you've been looking at that.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of it did go to the New Democrats, but the PCs got just enough to get them to that majority threshold because the PCs are just at 40%, just under that 40% mark. They gained 8 points from the last election, so big pickup for them. But the New Democrats actually took the biggest advantage of that Liberal drop. They picked up 11 points, up to 35%. But look at this Liberal number. They are at 18.7% in the popular vote, but they've lost 19.6%. So they have half the vote, not even half the vote of what they had in 2014. And the Greens only up slightly, but they got the votes where they really need to. They got it in Guelph. Now, where did this PC gain come from? Let's look at it down. Let's break it down regionally. For the PCs, the big advantage was, look at these gains in the Greater Toronto Area and Toronto itself. Up 10 points in Toronto at 33%. That's just shy of what Doug Ford managed in the 2014 mayoral election. But look at this, up 12 points in the GTA to 44.5%. These two parts of the province, this is where they're gaining most of their seats, but they've also gained in the rest of the province as well, up 8 points in Northern Ontario and in Central Ontario. Eastern Ontario, just a little bit of a bump, but they're still in first place in that place. But it's Toronto and the GTA. This is what is delivering Doug Ford his majority government. And he said he would deliver Toronto and the GTA, and it does seem like he is doing it.
What's his promise?
Yeah. I mean, and those numbers really show you that, Eric, that breakdown of how much they had to gain in order to get in there. If they hadn't had that, we would not be talking majority, right?
No, absolutely not, because this is really where their seat gains are coming, and it's this number in the GTA particularly, up to 45% of the vote. That's huge. That gives them a lot of seats, and they are taking them from the Liberals.
Yeah, and this was the base of Ford Nation, so it does make some sense. Let's head out to Lisa McLeod's headquarters right now. We're told they are so happy there. They're partying. If we can get our camera person to pull out a little bit. We heard she was dancing, and, well, they are dancing. It is celebration time. It's a long time for them, though. They've balled this up for a long time. They are letting loose tonight. Look at that. Look at the smile on her face.
Listen, Lisa McLeod is a very experienced and capable politician.
Yes.
Will likely end up in cabinet in some position. One of those people that, as you say, has battled for a long time in the backbenches. So when you make a win like this tonight and you know, hey, I might get a promotion, I might get a little more money, that's something to celebrate. It's a good night for her. And there will be other people. We have seen in recent days, Doug Ford pressured a little bit to talk about who would be in his cabinet. There are a lot of new faces in the NDP. In some ways, being an official opposition is maybe a good thing for them, right? You're in training. You get to let these new people figure out what these jobs are. You get how do you be a politician? Yeah. You learn more about your files. Whereas some of the people in the Progressive Conservative Party are very much capable and ready to go into cabinet right now. You only have to think about Christine Elliott. There's an awful lot of federal MPs who are probably going to be elected tonight. Those people as well would be good cabinet contenders. So. Not that the NDP couldn't have done it. No. Certainly they could have if they had to.
Experience, I would think.
But this gives them a little bit of time to sort of regroup and get ready to form government maybe another time around.
All right, let's head back over to Mike Wise. He's got some numbers for us. Mike.
We want to explain some of the numbers in the bottom of your screen. Those 8 Liberals at this point, 8, the number that's needed for the Liberals to maintain official party status. They needed to hold on to some seats in the Ottawa area, and that appears what they're doing tonight. That's helping them out with that. Let's take a look at some of those results at this point. Orleans, Marie-France Lalonde with a comfortable lead at this point over Cameron Montgomery as well. Another riding to take a look at here, Ottawa South, John Fraser, significant riding for the Liberals. Dalton McGuinty's former riding, John Fraser, his constituency manager in that office as well, holding on to this seat for the Liberals in Ottawa South. Ottawa Vanier, Natalie Desrosiers as well, another cabinet minister from that. One more to show you of this area as well, Kathleen Wynne in Toronto with a lead of 890, holding on to her seat. A significant development if this holds on as well. Don Valley West, Kathleen Wynne, again, one of those seats leading to the 8th there. If she holds on, that could be key for the Liberals maintaining that official party status, perhaps her holding on and staying in to that seat rather than risking a by-election and stepping down. We'll have to see how the evening goes.
Yeah, that's a complication I hadn't thought of because, yeah, I mean, because winning maybe wasn't the best choice for her here because if it does mean that that's the only way for them to hold official party status, then she doesn't have the option to leave quickly, which I know she hasn't said she wants to do, but presumably that's what happens.
Uncomfortable for her in the legislature after being decimated at the polls like that, to have to sit around, and how long is she going to be willing to do that? But then you don't want to give up the seat in a by-election.
Yeah, but when you've been decimated this way, and it is in large part due to you, because that's what being leader is about. You hold responsibility and you're accountable for those things. Then presumably, you know, a loss would make things easier for her. If she has to make the decision between staying to keep official party status and going, she's in a tough boat, that's for sure.
Let's check in with Mike Crawley. Mike, you've been following her and her leadership and her campaign. What do you think is going to happen here? Because it looks like she might hold that seat tonight.
Yeah, so if she holds the seat and it really does stay at 8, it's going to be absolutely certain that she stays on as an MPP. I doubt very highly that she would necessarily stay on as the party leader because, you know, the Liberals are going to want to rebuild out of this. And so there's going to have to be something in the way of a leadership convention. Interestingly, the last time when Kathleen Wynne was chosen as the Liberal leader 5 years ago, it was a delegated convention, which we don't have generally anymore in this country. And the Liberals said, we're going to change the rules. We're going to go to one of those one-member, one-vote things. They have not done that. So we could actually see a delegated leadership convention again here in Ontario for the Liberal leadership. I just can't see how Kathleen Wynne could stay on as leader after this result, but I do think that she stays on as an MPP in particular if they really only have the 8 seats. All of those people are going to have to stay and try to have some sort of influence there at Queen's Park.
What are you hearing, Mike? Can I just ask you, what are you hearing from I don't know, any of your insiders? The Liberals, this is what they sort of expected tonight? Are they feeling very depressed? Is this sort of a relief that they might have hit this magic number of 8?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, Rosemary, this has come at us all so fast and furious, these results, that I haven't been able to keep up. I've just been, mostly in touch with people here at the PCs. But, this would indicate that Kathleen Wynne's gambit worked, right? She, worked partly, right?
Yes.
It gave them their official party status. They didn't get the balance of power, which is what they would have really liked to have had and actually seen a minority situation. On the other hand, you know what this means is that it's going to be another 4 years before there's an election. Yes. It gives the party time to rebuild. And, maybe they will be able to position themselves as the alternative to the PCs after we have 4 years of a Doug Ford government.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, a minority government would have been, in some ways, the worst thing, actually, for the Liberals, right? Because they would have had less time to rebuild. They obviously have to find new candidates. And money. And if the per-vote subsidy falls by the wayside, which is a real possibility, then they have to change their fundraising structure entirely.
Yeah, and they have to hold at those 8 seats to get official party status and get the money and get to ask questions and those things. We want to jump over quickly to Mike Wise, who's looking at some of the holes that the Liberals are getting in the GTA.
Yeah, let me show, I've got a map of the City of Toronto up right now. Doug Ford, the PCs with 11 ridings in the City of Toronto as well. 3 Liberal seats. Let's take a close look at what is happening in there. Don Valley East, Michael Couteau, again, 158, a bit of a lead in here as well, but former cabinet minister there as well, lead. What else? One of the other ones, Don Valley West, as we were talking about, Kathleen Wynne building her lead in that riding, holding on to it at this point as well. We've got that 3rd riding in Scarborough-Guildwood. Another former Ontario cabinet minister, Mitzi Hunter. Slim lead at this point, but a lead, and that is what the Liberals were looking for as they try to hold on to that official party status, thanks to these 3 seats and those seats in Ottawa as well.
Yeah, Mitzi Hunter, their education. It is going to be an uncomfortable time for them if they don't hold on to those 8 seats. They're in a lot of trouble. But at this point, as we look at the bottom of your screen, leading or elected for the PCs in 75 ridings, 37 for the NDP, 8 for the Liberals, 1 for the Green. I think a lot of people thought that, as well as the NDP they're doing now, becoming the official opposition, they thought they would do better, no?
Yeah, I mean, the polls certainly showed that things were a little tighter than what we're seeing here tonight, but we've talked about it before, and this has to do a little bit with seat distribution and where there are seats. As we saw from some of the stuff that Eric's been showing us, if the PCs were picking up a lot of their support in the GTA, in Toronto itself, in the 905, which is also vote-rich region, that makes it very difficult for the NDP to really be more competitive than they are tonight. I must say, I think that is a significant majority. I think that does a couple of things. I think that it allows Doug Ford to go ahead with his agenda. He doesn't have to explain it or try and win over support. That's right. He has been told by Ontarians, we're willing to try some of the stuff you're talking about, even if you didn't explain it all to us. We like some of these ideas and we're willing to see what you can do. And that does make it easier to govern. I mean, when you don't have to worry about whether the population is behind you, and at least in these initial...
the confidence is there.
That's right. At least in these initial months when you're trying to get things going, that will help him, and it will allow the Progressive Conservatives to maybe push a little faster or a little harder on some of their ideas.
And we talked about this election being one of stark choices, whether you're heading right or you're heading left. Let's go to Marivelle and find out some of the issues that made you decide how you voted tonight. Marivelle.
Got the top 5 issues that our Vote Compass respondents identified in that survey. More than 460,000 of them responded. And I'll give you a little bit about what the PCs promised in terms of these priorities identified by voters. Of course, number 1 is the economy. It almost always is in pretty much any election. And in this particular one, Ford and the PCs, you might recall that clip from Doug Ford saying that Ontario was going to see prosperity, the likes of which we have never seen before. And a little bit about that too, promising some tax relief to the lower and the middle class. And so that was some of what he promised in terms of the economy. Healthcare, also an important issue identified by our Vote Compass respondents. And speaking on healthcare, the PCs promised, they talked about hallway medicine, and that was the problem with the Wynne government. There were lots of beds in hallways, and they promised to end that. Also promised to add more beds to care facilities too. Education was identified by our respondents as the number 3 top issue for them in this election. And this is where the old sex ed curriculum that the PCs promised to get rid of, that the Wynne government implemented, and said that they were going to open up more dialogue with parents, and they would shelve that new sex ed curriculum until they could come up with more after this dialogue with families. And the number 4 top issue identified was the environment, and Doug Ford didn't really speak too much about that because I guess of his position on climate change and the environment, but did promise to set up a sort of an emissions reduction fund. So speaking to that concern a little bit too. And the 5th most important issue for voters is energy. And you might recall Doug Ford slamming the Liberals' cap and trade program and promising to clean up the Liberal hydro mess. So, guys, a lot of this resonated with voters, and we are seeing that in the results tonight.
All right, thank you for that. If you're on the Hydro board tonight, if you're head of Hydro 1,
well, you're going to get a big severance.
Yes, I think that poison pill was somewhere around $10 million.
And, you know, that is one of the things that Kathleen Wynne recognized as her big Achilles heel, something that she had done badly,
all the way
that
back.
she had communicated badly.
And people had warned her, don't do this, because the populace, 80 to 90%, did not want this.
Yeah, and people didn't seem to understand that they were raising hydro fees in order to correct the hydro system, and then they had to buy it back. Anyway, it was a bad policy and badly implemented. And so Doug Ford really probably bought off some of that by that as well.
All right, and look at this. History tonight for the Ontario Green Party. Mike Schreiner winning in Guelph. He is, of course, the Green Party leader. For the Green Party, we were saying earlier tonight, Rosie, 1 seat is a success. He placed 4th in the 2011, and then I think in 3rd in the 2009 by-election. They put out a full slate of candidates this time around. Some of the issues, obviously environmental issues, important to this party, and I think if we can see through all those signs, he maybe take the podium, and we can hear from him tonight. Born in Kansas, came to Ontario to follow his wife up here, father of 2. Lower payroll taxes on their platform, gas taxes, parking fees. The big one, though, that a lot of people thought would not work for them because it sunk John Tory and the PCs when he went, but he wants to merge the school boards here in the province. And instead of the separate school board.
These are all ideas in the platform. None of this will actually happen.
It won't happen,
so,
but when you look at it, this is a big deal tonight, the fact that even with this agenda, people in Guelph, after all these years, are giving him a seat in the legislature.
Well, what it allows him to do is, I would imagine, team up with the NDP and the Liberals. They would have a lot of common values around the environment, and to try and hold Doug Ford to account on many of those things. Doug Ford has said, yeah, I believe in climate change, but I don't believe in a cap-and-trade system that Ontario is currently part of with Quebec and California. I want out of that immediately. He has sort of a more sector-by-sector approach to try and get people to do it on their own, if you will. So this is a big win for him, but it also allows him to push some of these issues and try and get them talked about more at Queen's Park, and that's a big deal.
Yeah,
that's a
jubilation.
big deal.
And they did put out a full slate of candidates, but much like you said, even after Elizabeth May got in, others didn't follow.
Right.
But it is important to have a seat at the table, and now they have a seat at the table. They're in the legislature, and they're also going to be in the debates.
Yeah, although we should point out, because Mike Crowley reminded us of this the other day, of course he doesn't have official party status, and he doesn't get a question.
No, but he'll get a seat.
But he'll get a seat, and he'll get on, the media radar, and he'll be allowed to try and push things the way he can and how he can.
All right, are we going over to Eric Grenier next? I see him standing by over there. All right, let's head out to Frank Cleese with Joanne Canello first. Oh, there you are. Good evening, Joanne. What's happening there?
Hey, Dwight. Yeah, well, it's a pretty happy mood here, as you might expect. We found Frank Cleese, very popular guy, hard to track down. He is a former Conservative MPP, as people know, and a longtime Ford supporter. So we're here to ask him, obviously congratulate your folks. You had a good night here. But it's been a bit of a roller coaster campaign, Frank. So when he takes the role as Premier, what are going to be the first priorities for Doug Ford?
Well, I think Doug made it very clear that it's for the people. And he will act swiftly to implement the plan that he committed to. I'm sure that the first thing that is on the agenda is to deal with the tax cuts that he's promised, the reduction of hydro costs. Doug is someone who will be able to deal with the bureaucracy to ensure that the implementation of his committed plans is being done swiftly and that the people of this province will feel it in their pocketbook, because I'm convinced that that was the message that resonated with people. The former government's financial policies were starting to hurt people in their pocketbooks. They couldn't deal with the taxes, the high electricity rates. Doug Ford is a man of action, which is why I supported him from the very beginning.
So people will want to feel those tax cuts or those pocketbook issues. They're going to want to see, a difference to, their personal bank accounts quickly. Is that really doable? It is still a big government. You've been there. How easily is that to accomplish?
Well, it's easy if you've got a leader who actually has the courage to direct the bureaucracy to get the job done. And that's why I supported Doug Ford for the leadership, because he understands what it's like to be in a boardroom. He understands what it's like to give the charge, and he'll hold people accountable, not only his own team as cabinet and caucus, but the bureaucracy. And I'm counting on Doug to be the Doug Ford that I know.
Thank you. That's Frank Cleese, former Tory MPP and a Ford supporter here at headquarters. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much. Let's get right to the panel because they've got a lot to talk about right now.
Okay, let's start with someone who's not here, the Green Party. I mean, that's one seat, but that's a big deal, is it not, Kathleen?
Certainly, it's big for them. Yeah. I think we'll have to see where it goes. How, as you said earlier, how he can make a voice for himself, how he can use the media. He's not going to have the resources of a party status, but it is a toehold or a beachhead, if you will.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're expecting to hear from Kathleen Wynne shortly, maybe in as little as 10 minutes or so. So, what do you think we're going to hear from her tonight? I'll start with you, Tiffany.
This is a tough night for Liberals. We're looking at a lot of long-time MPPs who have very strong records and have been incredible both in their communities and across Ontario for the changes that they've made as ministers. And I think for them, their legacy, their records, this is a somber moment. And I think she'll, an odd space for her to be competitive in her own riding right now while and as this is taking place. And so looking forward to seeing that room.
I think that is probably the worst position she could be be in, to be winning your seat and it be the one seat to get you to 8, your official party status. I mean, that's a
Now, we've had other conversations over the years about changing the seat count for party status if it was necessary for the NDP in 2003 and prior to that. So I don't know if this 8 count is that much of a point, but certainly unexpected.
What do you think she has to say tonight?
I don't think she's going to pull a Jim Prentice. I don't think she's going to say I'm out of here, because she's been pretty classy up till now. And say what you will about whether it worked or whether the impact she's had on her party's chances. She's been pretty classy, and I think she'll be that way tonight.
Yeah, no, I think it's nervous to go out before knowing the result of your own seat, but maybe as leaders, she just wants to speak to the party's results, and maybe that's why they're going to put her out sooner than later.
Yeah, and I have heard that she's been emotional, I guess, because this is the end of her reign as premier, certainly, but no one goes into an election thinking that your party is going to be decimated in this way. It doesn't mean that the Liberal Party is gone forever, I would imagine. This is that, no. So what has to happen now in the weeks ahead?
We have a lot of rebuilding to do. We have a lot of conversations locally, a lot of grassroots joining to do, and I think that's we've got a 4-year runway for that conversation.
And that's sort of good, isn't it?
I'm not going to say that a current majority is a good thing for Ontario, but I will say that I'm hoping that we can take our time and find ourselves as a party again and move our way forward.
Okay.
I would just say personally that Kathleen Wynne put a lot of personal capital on the line with her sorry, not sorry, with doing what she did last Saturday. She made a lot of personal sacrifices, not just the sacrifices that we all do in politics, but she realized that her brand was a problem. And by putting that on the line, obviously it seems like she's managed to save her party status, at least within the ledge.
Yeah. Let's talk about brand a little bit here, because I wonder how much of this is about Doug Ford, do you think, Ginny? I mean, certainly he gets credit tonight, but some of this work was done under Patrick Brown, and I'm sure he's watching tonight and thinking, oh man, that could have been mine. But was it progressive Conservatives who were out tonight, or was there something a little extra special sauce with Doug Ford?
Patrick had a strong team around him, and Doug had a strong team around him as well. Some of those people crossed over. Doug was able to pull really strong campaign team members from both Caroline and Christine's leadership camps. So the structures in place were really strong, you're right. And I want to go back to this piece about approach, this question of the media bus and whether they were communicating in these sort of glitzy, made-for-TV media availabilities. And they said no to that. They said Ontario Proud, for example, has told us that there's a way to communicate directly to voters and kind of skip over the traditional earned media, because frankly, you guys aren't getting the eyeballs you used to. That seems to have worked. I'm not sure, how much of that played into this. A lot of this was just straight up change. But you also, kudos to Doug. This platform was his. It was all stuff that resonated with him personally. And it's this authentic piece of understanding, whether it's buck a beer or where you buy your beer at the corner store,
or your gas going down 10 cents,
or the price at the pump, the little things that matter to people that he doesn't scoff at, he doesn't turn his nose up at.
Yeah, I have to say, the media stuff didn't irk me as much as maybe it did people in Queen's Park, because I was sort of used to things with Stephen Harper, things being fairly controlled. The media bus was a little strange, and I do think, I would hope that they will be a little more open to questions, at least when they form government, because I think that is sort of a central piece of democracy, but we'll see how things unfold. Okay, I'm going to throw things. We'll come back to you all. Very good thoughts, as usual. I'll throw you back to Dwight now.
All right, thank you, Rosie. I know as soon as the panel said that they have official party status, if you look at the scoreboard on the bottom of your screen, they dipped to 7, up, and they just did it again. Then they went back up to 8. They're back to 7 again. Let's head over to Eric and get a look right now at some of the party standings.
Well, yeah, what the Liberals want are the 8 seats so that they have official party standing in here, the Ontario legislature. But look at this PC cohort, majority government. You can see the New Democrats now, they're up at leading and elected in 40 over on the opposition side. That one green is a big victory for Mike Schreiner and that party. But why are the New Democrats only at 40? Let's look at how their vote broke down across the province, because it tells the story of where the New Democrats came up short. Now, they've got some big gains throughout the province, up 13 points in Eastern Ontario. They don't have a very deep history there. They're up 10 points in the GTA, 15 points in Toronto. But Toronto is where they've gotten roughly half of the gains that they've made tonight. They're at 36.6%. They're leading in the city. They haven't won since Bob Rae did it in 1990. But the problem for the New Democrats, 27% in the GTA. They're up 10 points, but it only gained them a couple seats. This was one of the stories of this campaign, that the New Democrats didn't have that vote efficiency in the GTA. And we're seeing that tonight because despite this big jump for the New Democrats, it didn't deliver them the seats they needed. And that's why they're in official opposition status. Though that does right there, that 41, that would be their second best performance in the history of the party.
And even with that said, thank you for that, Eric. He makes a good point there, Rosie, that it's about the efficiency of getting those seats in the vote, in the seat-rich regions. You can win a percentage of the popular vote, but if you're not winning in the areas, the NDP needed an orange wave right across the province to do better than they did tonight. Not that they did badly at all. They've improved significantly, but still to keep the PCs from a majority.
No, and it gives them a lesson, right, about where they need to concentrate efforts next time around, and it also gives them a lesson about how broad support has to be if you want to form government, and that is something that the Progressive Conservatives pulled off, I think, pretty effectively, perhaps with the exception of Eastern Ontario, which is a sort of where I live, which is a sort of weird little space where for some reason, you know, the Liberals managed to hold on to at least a few of those seats for whatever reason. But I think that part of the story here tonight is not only this gamble that Kathleen Wynne made that didn't work. I know that they have 8 seats, but I think the goal was to hold them to a minority. That did not happen. I wonder, too, if she had been a little bit clearer in her prescription for strategic voting, whether that would have made a difference. For instance, say, if you're not going to vote for me, vote for people who have progressive values, which would have led, I think, to an NDP win.
And when she did not do that.
That's right. And that would have been something maybe that Liberals would have been more comfortable with, because now we're in a place where Liberals and NDP parties we call progressive, are going to have to fight really hard to push back against an agenda that is completely different, couldn't be more different.
4 years.
In terms of what they want. And then, you know, how do you balance those things, and how do you live in a province where you don't agree with those values? But clearly Ontarians do, and they want to give those things a try.
Let's bring in Mike Crawley right now. We've been talking about this gamble from Kathleen Wynne did that, and the goal, she said, was that they wouldn't have this strong mandate to go back to Queen's Park with. Obviously tonight, Mike, it didn't work.
Well, and you know, Dwight, that's how low a bar is being set for the Liberals right now, is that 8 seats is considered a success. Good grief, this is the worst result for the Liberal Party, except one, in the history of Ontario. So, you know, it's bad news, like whatever kind of spin they want to go and put on it. And look, also too, one of the reasons why it's like bouncing back and forth is that some of those, 2 of those seats that they're, quote, leading in are really, really slim, like less than 100 votes. Yeah. So the Liberal official party status is by no means in the bag.
Mike, can I ask you, what do you think would be the first policy move that Doug Ford government would do? What's the easiest thing to sort of get moving on right away?
So what he said he would do first, the very first thing he's going to do is get rid of the board of Hydro One and order a new board to fire the $6 million man, as he referred to Mayo Schmidt, the CEO of Hydro One. So is that going to be what they're able to do? I don't know. I mean, you know, they've got to bring in a cabinet, swear in a cabinet, and I would be interested to see if they're going to try and tweak the budget in some ways, because you've had a budget brought in here with a $6 billion deficit or so that the Liberals had, doesn't have the tax rates that the PCs want to see. You know, I don't know if they bring in some sort of like a budget amendment bill, perhaps.
Yeah.
So, Mike, is this then tonight? Is this a Doug Ford win, or is this a Kathleen Wynne loss? Who's
well, it's a Kathleen Wynne disaster, for sure. It's a Kathleen Wynne disaster, but yeah,
change, I guess, could have went in any
credit
direction.
Where credit is due.
Yeah.
It change could have, and you know, the change did not flow to the direction of the NDP and Andrea Horvath. And you know, I'm seeing some recrimination among NDP supporters who feel that, you know, the Liberal supporters should not have split the vote on the progressive side of the spectrum. Whatever. This is a Doug Ford win. And, you know, the Kathleen Wynne campaign, you know, just did not have it.
So, Mike, I'll ask you one last question. How quickly, and talk a little bit about the strength of the bench here for the Progressive Conservatives in terms of doing the first thing, of course, that they have to do, which is form a cabinet. He's got a lot of experience to pull from, and that is probably reassuring for him and for his team.
Yeah, so they had high 20s in the way of returning MPPs. They've got a number of former members of Parliament. They've got lawyers. They've got people with business experience, banking. It's quite a contrast from what the NDP had. I was told that among the 124 candidates, there were only 3 lawyers running for the NDP, and 2 of them were in ridings that the NDP wasn't likely to win, so that wouldn't have given them very much in the way of choices for Attorney General. Doug Ford trotted out people, showed them sitting around a table. It's at sort of the midway point in the campaign, later in the campaign, right after that last debate, trying to say, this could be my cabinet. It's not going to be a terribly ethnically diverse cabinet, it must be said, because most of the people he brought around there were white, but he does have some very strong women that have been elected. So it'll be interesting to see what he does in the way of cabinet making. Also, how big is the cabinet? Because sometimes that sends a signal for the way you want to trim the size of government.
Yeah, and he has long-time legislator. We have Christine Elliott there. We have Caroline Mulroney, of course, and also Rod Phillips, the CEO of the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation. So he does have some experience and experienced people to pick from.
And I would imagine, Mike, too, that he would want to bring in some of those leadership competitors, right, to show that there's some party unity. So reach out to Christine Elliott, reach out to Caroline Mulroney.
Oh, I think it's a slam dunk that both Christine Elliott and Caroline Mulroney will be in the cabinet. That's almost a certainty. But people like Vic Fideli, a longtime finance minister, who was the finance critic, pardon me, who was the interim leader there for a while. Lisa MacLeod is another obvious choice. There's some very experienced progressive conservatives. And man, those folks who have been sitting on the left-hand side of the speaker are going to be awfully happy to be sitting over on the other side.
Those were dark days that are over now for all of them.
All right, thank you, Mike. Big part of the story tonight is what is happening with the Liberal Party, and Mike Wise is taking a look at that for us right now. Mike.
And Dwight, we've seen that number go up and down around that magic 8 for party status. We overlook look at the map here. They are safe with 3 seats in the Ottawa area. We're seeing flips back and forth in the Thunder Bay area, but let's also talk about what is happening in the Toronto area, now leading in 4 seats as well. Let's give you some details to show just how narrow some of these leads are. Scarborough-Guildwood, Mitzi Hunter, this has been going back and forth with the PC candidate all night, usually responsible for that flip. That change you see down the bottom of your screen right now is 73-vote lead. This is going back and forth, as we say. Let's show you some other close ones. Thunder Bay, Atikokan, Bill Morrow, 39-vote lead. One of those seats in Northern Ontario. Again, too close to call at this point. Let's show another one. Thunder Bay, Superior North, Michael Gravel, bit more of a comfortable lead there in Thunder Bay. Still too early for us to call there as well. And then another one, that ninth seat you saw popping up is another Toronto seat I think we're going to next, or we can at least talk about Eglinton Lawrence. Mike Cole, longtime MPP in that area as well, coming up with a 603 vote lead. This may have just been the case of some of the polls coming in a bit later. He had a surge of last support as more of these votes get counted, and that has flipped the seat over for another Liberal in the leading column, I should say. We haven't declared him leading yet.
We'll see if he holds on to that. I mean, Mike Cole has been an MPP since I was a teenager in this town. We talked earlier a little bit about populism in politics, and Doug Ford is a populist leader. We're seeing this south of the border. We're seeing this right around the world. What role does that play in this? You know,
I think that people get disenchanted with politics and with politicians. I think that that's a fairly normal thing, especially if you see the same same party in power for 15 years. You begin to see perhaps a sense of entitlement within government. I think that's natural. It doesn't matter what party it is. I know Kathleen Wynne tried to equate Doug Ford with Donald Trump. I don't think that that's. And I don't think it's probably a fair assessment. No, but what he does represent in terms of populism is someone that speaks boldly, clearly, simple language, and plays to people that feel like they haven't been heard. And that's really what populism is about, right? Trying to tap into the people that don't feel that they've had a voice. And he did do that. And he talked to people about giving them back their money, cutting their hydro bills, making things a little bit easier for them. And some of those things that Ginny was talking about, those easy things that you could put on a bumper sticker about dollar beers and whatnot, those are things that are appealing to people. So, there is a difference between campaigning and saying those things and governing, and Doug Ford is going to start to learn about what that is.
All right. There is another big event happening tonight, Rosie. Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Finals. The second period has just ended, and we're going to take a pause and give the people watching that game an update on the election. Welcome to the Ontario election. I'm Dwight Drummond.
I'm Rosemary Barton. Don't worry, we'll get you back to the hockey game in just a few minutes.
But right now, we want to tell you what is happening in the Ontario election, and our CBC Decision Desk has declared a provincial government for the Conservatives tonight. Doug Ford has brought his party to power at Queen's Park. Ford Nation, Rosie, now province-wide. Let's find out how this happened this evening. We have Mike Wise here and Eric Grenier, our poll analyst, to break down the numbers for us. Right now, you are looking at Doug Ford's headquarters in Etobicoke North as they celebrate a win for their party and the Progressive Conservatives tonight. Gentlemen.
Look at that number for the Progressive Conservatives, 40%. This is why they have won a majority government, a big jump in support. But the New Democrats also up significantly to 34%. They've only twice been over the 30% mark in all of their history. The story is the drop for the Liberals, down nearly half of their support to 19%. The Greens at 5%. But let's look at the seat change and why the PCs have secured this majority government. It's because the PCs are winning a lot of seats at the expense of the Liberals, who have dropped significantly. The Liberals down 57 seats, and you can see that the PCs have picked up 37. The NDP, good night for them, 19, and 1 seat for the Green Party, a big victory for leader Mike Schreiner in Guelph.
And let's talk about where those seats are as well. If we call up a map of the province of Ontario, the results we've had some for a few ridings still not repeating. If I step back to show you the vote the last time, you see Southern Ontario. This is where the PCs made a lot of inroads. Here's the results right now. Doug Ford said he could win seats in the GTA. He has done that. The story of the night can be really told through what's happened to the leaders as well. Let's check in with the 4 leaders of the parties. Don Valley West, Kathleen Wynne, building a lead in here as well, holding on to that, helping her party potentially keep an official party status. We have declared Doug Ford winner in Etobicoke North as well. Let's go check in with the NDP. Andrea Horvath declared projected to be elected in Hamilton Centre as well. And the other big story of the night, the Green Party, with their first ever seat in the Ontario Legislature. Mike Schreiner, we are projecting, will win that seat for the Green Party by a very comfortable margin, over 11,000 votes. Dwight?
All right.
And for people who haven't been following this as attentively as all of us, if you may have been watching hockey, for instance, within 15 minutes, we were able to declare a Progressive Conservative government. And just 6 minutes later, we were able to tell people it was a majority. So this happened quickly and it was decisive. Mike Crawley is at Ford headquarters tonight, where people are very excited, obviously. Mike, what's the mood there like?
Oh, it's jubilant. You know, it was like this, I don't know, avalanche, because the results were coming in so quickly, and just the energy. It was just remarkable how quickly and how energized the people were in this place. Look, you know, there was a lot of criticism of the Doug Ford campaign. There were a number of controversies, but the fact is he's carried this. He's got the majority that the PCs needed. They went into the campaign with a fairly big lead, and you know, they were able to pull off this win. I've been told that Doug Ford and his family are arriving here at the Congress Centre. He'll be able to make his victory speech a little bit later. And the thing is that the PCs, they won in places where the New Democrats kept saying they were going to be able to take, places like southwestern Ontario. And you're looking at a historic loss for the Liberals. The historic loss, it seems that they are, it's one of the worst records in the history of Ontario.
Wow, okay, thank you for that. As you look at the bottom of your screen, you see the numbers right there. That is our scoreboard tonight. 71 seats where the PCs are elected or leading, 41 for the Liberals, or for the NDP rather, and 8 for the Liberals, which, Rosie, gives them official party status. Let's head out to Hamilton now and check in with the NDP now. Much better than they did last time, but still, they are now the official opposition. Chris Glover.
That's right, much better. That's right, much better than they did in the last vote, but certainly not the result that a lot of folks in this room were hoping for. There have been some applause, but they've barely been able to fill this convention center here in Hamilton. But certainly they are happy that they're at least official opposition. Dwight, back to you.
All right, thank you. And thank everyone for watching us on CBC News Network. Stay right where you are. The election coverage continues in just a second.
If you're watching on the main channel, we'll get you back to hockey. Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Meanwhile, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
All right. We'll say goodbye to our folks watching the hockey game, and hello once again to you. Just incredible the speed that this happened with tonight.
I mean, I guess that's because of the electronic tabulation. But I have to say, we do sort of practices. People probably don't know that at home because it's the only way to prepare.
Research.
And most of ours were fast, but they were also tight. It was a lot tighter. And I think that you know, Ontarians were a little clearer in terms of their choices than perhaps we even knew. And they decided that if they were going to send a message about wanting change for the province, that it was going to be that they weren't just going to shift to something that was a little bit like the Liberals, that they were going to try something entirely new. And that, you know, that's an exciting result for people that supported the Progressive Conservatives. And it does mean that the province is going to start looking different. And you can like those policies or not, but those policies will start to shape the way this province works. And I would point out for people watching in the rest of the country, because there's lots of them watching and lots of them who care about these results, Ontario is an economic force, an engine for this country, makes up 40% of Canada's GDP. So the decisions that are made by any government
affect everybody.
That's right. So everybody sort of needs Ontario to succeed to a certain extent, and I think that's why people care so much.
And it feels like Doug Ford almost represented some of the anger Ontarians had at our legislature at Queen's Park, and is coming through tonight in the numbers you see at the bottom of your screen. Let's head over to Mike Wise with some more results for us.
Well, I want to put some stories, some faces to this wall of blue we see in the bottom part of the province here as well. Let's look at some of the names you may recognize or been following along, see how they're doing as well. Newmarket, Aurora, Christine Elliott, the decision desk has declared she will likely win that seat, 10,000 votes at this point as well. Some other, she of course placed second to Doug Ford in leadership race. Sam Oosterhoff making history a few years ago, becoming Ontario's youngest ever MPP, elected at the age of 19. Now he's a veteran, returning after a general election as well. Again, Parm Gill, this was a former federal MP, was based in the Brampton area for the federal Conservatives, decided to jump into provincial politics this term, taking this election, taking the Milton riding there as well, defeating another Liberal cabinet minister there as well. And we also have Kitchener-Conestoga, a familiar name, a confusing name, Mike Harris Jr., winning in a riding that was once represented by Michael Harris, another Michael Harris, but this Mike Harris is the son of Mike Harris, the former Premier of Ontario. So former Premier Mike Harris's son, Mike Harris Jr., elected in a riding once held by Michael Harris.
Hey, fun fact about that one. Fun fact. The only place where, well, not Brian, but the other former Prime Minister helped campaign, Stephen Harper, did show up and help that Mike Harris.
And it seems to have worked out for them.
There you go. A guy who doesn't come out very often anymore. He did show up for him. So there you go.
We have to talk about Kathleen Wynne here and her legacy. And she was at one point the most unpopular premier in this country. And a lot of people felt that if she might have stepped down earlier, it might have saved what her party is facing tonight.
Yeah, and she was asked that question a lot of times by our friend Matt Galloway, for instance, on CBC Radio. And her answer was actually a fair answer, I thought. A year and a half ago, when they were deciding, like, what should we do? Should we keep going? Should we, stay? This wasn't an issue. Like, she wasn't beloved, but the numbers were not like this. And there was not a sense that things were going to crater in this way. So I'm not sure that there was an awareness that there was a deep dislike in this way, because it hasn't always been the case. She was liked at one point. I mean, she did form a government. But I also think that she was fighting a tide that she wasn't going to win. And I'm not sure there was anything, frankly,
it seemed almost, though, that the turning point may have been, though, that Hydro One. Yeah. And she said, listen, I didn't sell Niagara Falls, which is what a lot of people say she did. But it seemed to me that decision may have been the turning point for the party. Let's head out to her headquarters right now. Lisa Shing is out with Kathleen Wynne tonight. Lisa.
Right, Dwight. So we are waiting for Kathleen Wynne to speak. She's slated to come in any minute now. I've been speaking with some of the supporters here. One who was here basically before anyone else was, waiting for this moment. They are cautiously optimistic tonight, kind of getting the sense that they'll take any kind of victory or win that they can get at this point. And right now, the hope is they will keep at least 8 seats in the legislature. And of course, optimistic to Kathleen Wynne will get to keep her seat in Don Valley West. So cautiously optimistic, not dejected, but definitely a crowd that has tampered expectations, if you will.
Liberal wins. All right, thank you for that. We want to now just take a look at some of the Liberal wins, and we're going to have Mike Weiss set that up for us. But let's hear from the Green Party and their breakthrough tonight. I mean, one seat we said, as we were talking about this election, would be success tonight, and it seems that...
It's all relative in politics,
yes.
right? You know, you have different bars, somewhere. So this is good news for him.
And Mike Schreiner has been elected out in Guelph. Let's hear from him tonight.
I tell you what, over the last 9 years, I've learned so much about this great province and this city, this party, and probably most of all, I've learned a lot about myself. We are blessed. We are so blessed to live in Guelph and to live in Ontario. But it is also a privilege to live here, one that carries with it the great responsibility of leaving this place a better place for our children, our grandchildren, and the next 7 generations. I got into politics because I want to leave a livable future for my children. And so I commit to you. I commit to you that I will work hard for you. And I will work hard to make sure that we protect the people and places we love in this province. Tonight is the end of one chapter for me and the beginning of another. For Guelph, for the Green Party, for Ontario. I'm ready to take my seat at Queen's Park.
Congratulations to Mike Schreiner and the Green Party tonight. Let's head right out to Ford headquarters. We talked earlier in the night about them doing things differently. They have a different approach to this. And Mike, are we hearing that Doug Ford may be speaking sooner than later? Because usually the winner speaks last.
Yeah, that's my understanding, Dwight. Right now behind me, it's Dean French. He's the campaign chairman. So he came in and started chairing this election campaign right after Doug Ford won the leadership. So there was a completely different campaign chair during the Patrick Brown era. So Dean French is a Doug Ford loyalist. My understanding is that after he finishes speaking, there's going to be a video for about 1 minute, and then Doug Ford is coming on. At least that's the information that I've been given.
Have you ever seen that, Rosie?
I think the last time I saw that was when Hillary Clinton refused to concede, and so Donald Trump came out and said that I won because he didn't know what else to do. Yeah, this is a little backwards. I mean, this is just it's just convention. There's no rules, of course. Yeah. But normally you let the people who have lost come out and give their speeches, only in part because that's sort of how you get viewers to stick around, to be honest, as well, because the victor would be at the end, and that's who everybody wants to see at the end of an election. So this would be atypical, but I think we've seen, as you've made mention, that Doug Ford does things different. He rolls a little differently. So I guess that's what we're going to get tonight.
So, Mike, as you continue to cover Queen's Park, this may be a sign of things to come. Prescient here.
So, yeah, no, for sure. So they're into that video now. So, yes. Yeah, yeah, the song's kind of wormed its way into my head a little bit over these last little while. It's only 30 seconds long, the song, actually. So just kind of keep hearing it on repeat.
On a loop.
Look, it's going to be a change at Queen's Park. Absolutely. Yeah. This is a big shift from Kathleen Wynne, way over there on the left of the political spectrum, to Doug Ford.
It is, you know, as someone that underwent a change as well on Parliament Hill, just so you know, Mike, it's different, but it is exciting because it does mean that you have to find new sources, talk to new people, understand new issues, and it's like your job becomes new again. And that's, I guess, why Mike Crawley sticks around so much, because he knows that his job just gets different every time there's a new government.
And just to let the folks at home know, Mike keeps looking over his shoulder because he's trying to keep an eye on the podium, because as we understand it, and we hear the cheers now, Doug Ford is taking the podium as we speak.
I love it. What are you? Wow. I'll tell you. Hazel. Thank you. Wow. That's an incredible welcome. I thank you. And right in front of me, Hazel, thank you. Thank you, Hazel McCallion, Mayor Hazel. Hey, Tony. Thank you so much, my friends. What a response. This is incredible. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I will never forget the trust you put in me. My friends, this victory belongs to you. This victory belongs to the people, and tonight the people of Ontario have spoken. People from every walk of life, from every corner of this great province, people from every political stripe, you have come together around one common vision of Ontario. You have sent a clear message, a message of hope and prosperity. A vision for the people of this province, a vision of a government that works for the people. My friends, a government that respects you, a government with integrity, a government that will always put you first. My friends, help is here. Our team will work every single day to deliver this vision. We will work every single day for a better Ontario, a better future, and a brighter future for our children. An era of economic growth and prosperity, the likes of which this province has never seen before. Prosperity that will benefit every resident of Ontario. And tonight, we have sent a clear message to the world. Ontario is open for business. My friends, I am so proud of the incredible team that you have sent to Queen's Park, a team of all-stars that will work for you. A team that will always put you first, and we are grateful to all of those who put their names forward, all of those who run under the PC banner. Thank you for your hard work and sacrifice. My friends, when we began this journey, I made a commitment to you. I made a commitment to Ontario. I promised to work hard. I promised to run an honest and positive campaign, to focus on the policies that matter to you. I promise to deliver a strong, stable majority government, and together we did that. Together we made history. We have taken back Ontario. We have delivered a government that is for the people. A government that will respect your hard-earned tax dollars. And my friends, the party with the taxpayers' money is over. It's done. But the work has just begun. Our team will get to work immediately. We will deliver on our plan for the people. We will bring accountability, transparency, and integrity to the taxpayers of Ontario. We will reduce your taxes, reduce your gas prices, and keep more money in your pocket. A plan to fix our economy and create good-paying jobs. A plan to invest in the priorities that matter to you. And my friends, together with our skilled team of MPPs, this is what we will deliver. My friends, I want to thank my family for all of your support and love and support. To my wife, Carla, my mom, Diane, and my 4 girls, you've been my rock. I couldn't have done this without you. And I can tell you, and I know that my brother Rob is looking down from heaven. Just getting chills talking about him right now. I know Rob, he is celebrating with us tonight. We owe so much to Rob's legacy. A legacy of service to the people. A legacy started by my father, Doug Ford Sr., and a legacy that will continue. I want to thank my incredible campaign team, the best political team ever assembled, ever. I can tell you, a skilled and dedicated team who worked hard and stuck together. And I want to thank the thousands and thousands of volunteers from all across Ontario. You left nothing, absolutely, you left everything on the field. My friends, but most of all, I want to thank each of you. I thank you. I want to thank the people of Ontario. I owe everything to you. Your support, your energy, your belief in our cause. You are the ones who kept me going, who energized me at every single stop, and reminded me what's at stake, what we are fighting for. You reminded me to stay humbled and stay focused. You are the reason we are here today. And those who didn't support us, I want you to know that I will work even harder to earn your confidence. I also need to acknowledge my opponents in this race, to Kathleen Wynne and Andrea Horvath. No, guys. No. You fought a hard, very hard campaign, and I'll tell you, Ontario is better for it. We've had our different approaches, but we all share in the same goal of a better Ontario. And I want to work together to deliver on our mandate, a mandate for the people. My friend, a new day has dawned in Ontario, a day of opportunity, a day of prosperity, and a day of growth. We're going to turn this province around so our children and their children will always be proud to call Ontario home. We will make sure Ontario is the greatest place on earth to live, to do business, and to raise a family. And we will make Ontario once again the engine of Canada. My friends, together in 88 short days, we achieved the impossible. We united our party and united our province, and this is your victory. Tonight is your night. I thank you, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you. Thank you.
We've been listening to the victory speech. There he's hugging his mom, his wife and daughters following behind there from Doug Ford at the PC Party headquarters in Etobicoke tonight, the center of Ford Nation in the GTA. He has positioned himself as the tough guy ready to fight for the people, respecting the taxpayers. A populist message, and one that Ontarians listened to and wanted to hear, because Doug Ford is the next Premier of Ontario. A lot of those policies that he's put forward, very popular. Things like a buck of beer, 10 cents. When he said tonight about the 10 cents off a liter of gas, you heard the cheer go up in that room. And he has been treated like a rock star in many campaign stops around this province. Standing room only, lineups out the door. As he leaves the stage there, Rosemary, what struck you about Doug Ford's speech, victory speech?
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing surprising there.
No, he stuck to the script.
That's right. He needed to sort of reiterate some of the things that got him elected, and he needed to thank the people that got him elected, and he needed to talk about the people, right? Because that's what his message has been, how he's going to empower and bring the people front and center of his agenda. He also did, at the end, throw a bone to his competitors, and olive branch, you're right, to his competitors. And when the crowd booed, he told them to stop. Yes. So that also is sort of a classy thing to do. I think the appeal to his brother. Listen, I understand that this is a big moment for Doug Ford. There is definitely a family legacy.
There's a legacy here.
Public service.
Doug Ford Sr. and his brother.
That's right, and of politics. And so this is a big moment for them and for their family.
There's a lot of people doubted them. A lot of people did not think
That's right. But I think a lot of people in the rest of the world will wake up tomorrow and find out that Doug Ford is Premier Designate. And the only thing that they will know about him is that his brother was Rob Ford. So he mentioned him tonight, and that I get why he feels that he has his back and he's with him. I wonder whether that's going to continue, though, as he takes up the mantle of being Premier, because I think that gets a little complicated for him. But yes, there's a strong legacy of public service in that family.
But do you think the Ford brand then is more popular than the party, maybe, and that's what kind of helped tonight?
I don't think that no, I actually don't think that he is more popular than the party. I think we've seen, particularly amongst women in Ontario, that he's not actually all that popular.
I'm talking about just the overall brand.
I think that I think Doug Ford without the party wouldn't have won. I don't think you can divorce those two things. But I think he now has to find a way to become bigger than that brand, right? To make it really about governing and about what a progressive conservative Ontario looks like. And that becomes difficult. But listen, I haven't seen a bigger smile than that tonight. His family was obviously thrilled for him. So he's allowed to have this moment before we start asking some tough questions.
Yes, well, definitely he has to have tonight. And Mike Crawley is in that jubilant crowd out at Ford headquarters tonight. Are we heading back out there? Actually, let's head out to Hamilton. We've had a lot from the Ford campaign tonight. We need to hear from Andrea Horvath and how they're feeling about this. So let's head out to Hamilton Center. Obviously, Maybe not the jubilation that we see in Etobicoke North, but they must be happy out there in Hamilton Center tonight. Chris Glover?
Hey, Dwight, well, they just became happy a couple seconds ago because they are anticipating the speech from Andrea Horvath. Of course, a lot of the folks that I've been talking to over the course of the night, they've been quite disappointed. This, of course, was not the outcome that they were hoping for. But at the end of the day, they did double the seat count, approximately, of what they got in 2014. So many are seeing this as a small victory for them. Now, official opposition. That's something they have not had since 1987. So a lot of people are saying that, you know, they're very excited at least by that. And the other thing that we're hearing behind us is this cheer for NDP. Obviously, Andrea Horvath is expected to come out in just a couple of minutes, and you'll likely hear from her that they did the best campaign they could. This is a historic campaign for the NDP in Ontario, and here she is now.
The Steeltown Scrapper is making her way to the microphone. They were neck and neck going into this, Rosie. And I know that people, if you were listening to the polls, expected a tighter race here, but nothing not to be proud of tonight for the NDP and Andrea Horvath.
Yeah, I mean, they had 18 seats at dissolution.
Right?
They went from third-party status to 40 seats here probably
official
tonight.
Opposition.
And that's a huge change. It means
is.
a lot of things for Andrea Horvath and her team. And it means that they get to really try being a government in waiting. That's what you are, an official opposition. And that's a challenge in and of itself.
Let's hear from her.
Well, thank you very, very much. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. I love you too. I love you too.
Most in her own writing.
My friends, from the very start of this campaign, people wanted change. And I could not be more proud that we offered a positive vision. Change for the better! New Democrats rejected the politics of fear and cynicism. We rejected
did that. And we put hope and vision for a better future at the heart of our campaign. And Ontarians have responded like never before. Today, millions of people voted for change for the better. We have won more seats than we have held in a generation. And I am deeply humbled that Ontarians have asked us to serve as the new official opposition. New voices, new ideas, and a strong team of new Democrats working for you, the people of Ontario. You know, I've spoken with Premier-designate Ford, and I did congratulate him on his achievement. And I told the Premier-designate that New Democrats will work each and every day for the change that families need to make life better for all of us, We will be positive and constructive in our approach, but the vast majority of Ontarians did not vote for cuts to health care, cuts to our schools, and cuts to the services that families are counting on. People did not vote for that. And we will be the voice at Queen's Park for all of those Ontarians. New Democrats will always stand with families, seniors, working people, and young people to protect what matters to most of the people of Ontario. Vous pouvez compter sur nous. To the candidates, campaign teams, and volunteers from every party, thank you. Thank you all for caring so deeply about the future of our province of Ontario. Thank you all so much. To the people of Hamilton, it is the privilege of my life to represent this great city. And I am deeply humbled that you have placed your faith in me yet again. I appreciate it very, very much. And to my family who are all here cheering us on tonight, to my family, especially my son Julian, you mean the world to me. And kisses. And to my incredible campaign team, thank you for one of the best campaigns we have ever had in our province as New Democrats. To our volunteers, you people in this room, to our volunteers and supporters, to our partners in the labour movement, to our MPPs, and all of our candidates, whether you won or lost tonight, and to our federal leader, Jagmeet Singh, whose tireless work helped us to elect candidates across Ontario. Thank you. Thank you for working so hard to give people hope for a better future in our province. Merci beaucoup, mes amis. Merci beaucoup. I am so proud of every candidate who put their name forward, and I am so proud of every New Democrat who has been elected tonight. Our new MPPs come from every corner of Ontario. They have incredible experience, and they will work for you and your family each and every day. You know, over the course of this campaign, I've met so many people who want change for the better in their lives. You know, I think of a couple of sisters. I think of a couple of sisters that I met, and those sisters are farming sisters. They farm together in Lambton County, and they have never voted for the NDP before. But they believe in dental coverage for everyone, and they joined us this time. I think of a young woman I met in Toronto's West End. She heard of our plans to make housing and childcare more affordable, and she joined us in this election. I think of a senior citizen that I met in Bowmanville in the Durham region who wanted change. And he saw our plan to give people more opportunities, and he joined us. I think of a senior citizen right here in Hamilton who has never volunteered with us before. She heard our plans to ask the richest people to pay a little bit more to make life better for everyone, and she joined us to make that happen. And you know, I think of the incredible people that I met in Kenora and Grassy Narrows, people who literally have to struggle just to access health care, and who have waited literally decades for action to clean up the mercury in the water. I invited them to join us to make change for the better happen together, and I want to thank everyone in Northern Ontario who has placed their trust in us. And I know that these are the people we fight for. People who work hard and believe in a better future for everyone. And they are exactly why the NDP cannot stop here. We will... We will keep fighting for you. We will keep fighting for you. Change for the better, my friends, is more than a slogan. And my friends, we will not rest. we will not stop fighting until we have it, until we have change for the better. We will keep... We will keep fighting for better public health care. We will keep fighting to make your life more affordable. We will keep fighting to give our children a better start and to help young people succeed. My friends, we should be immensely proud of the campaign that we've run. We should be immensely proud. And well, the results did not get us there this time. I invite you to join us, and together we'll keep fighting to bring change for the better to Ontario. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you so very much. Merci beaucoup, mes amis. Miigwech. Thank you so much. Thank you.
The leader of the official opposition at Queen's Park, Andrea Horvath of the NDP, doing things a little differently here tonight. Usually we go 3-2-1. We hear from the person who won last, but we are doing it different tonight. Big question about Andrea Horvath. She's always been popular, likability up there, but people haven't been aware of her, Rosie. Well, she has 4 years at Queen's Park to let people be aware of her now and raise that awareness level, because that's always been the issue for her.
Sure, and I mean, I think that campaign did a lot of that as well. I think Andrea Horvath sort of came into her own with this campaign. She was very confident and capable, particularly in the last debate. I thought she performed extremely well. What she has to figure out now is when you have a fella, premier designate, with a big, strong mandate and an agenda that is so different to yours, how do you try to hold him in check? Yeah. Right. And what do you do to represent the people who have elected you, knowing that he has more seats than you? So, you know, it's going to be a tough job, frankly. Official opposition is a tough job, but it sounds like I mean, she looks thrilled. It's one I think that she's happy to see. This is a victory for her tonight, no doubt about it. Clearly, there was an opening here, a window for her to form government.
That was what I was going to ask you, because we always talked about the millennials being the wild card in this election, and the NDP needed those young voters to get to the polls tonight, and I'm not sure they did.
I don't know. I mean, and that's the kind of data that we'll look at in
the,
in the days to come. But certainly, you know, there was a window for the NDP, and I'm sure they'll look at it later and say, well, is there anything else we could have done? I think the answer is no, and I think the answer is no in part because of the messaging from the Liberals. They did some damage there, and I think the Progressive Conservatives picked up more of the seats from the Liberals than probably the NDP was expecting. Anyway, a good night for her, and she's got to be satisfied with that.
She said they are proud of that, and we're talking about the Liberals, and we need to hear from Kathleen Wynne, because we are hearing now that she has resigned as the Liberal Party head. She's winning in her riding by a slim margin right now. She hasn't been elected there yet, but she spoke earlier this evening. Let's hear from Kathleen Wynne.
I have been so fortunate to get to know so many of you and to see what you do. You are passionate about what you do, and that is the beauty of Ontario. Some of you watching tonight are just finishing iftar. You are in the midst of Ramadan, and the days are long. Some of you have worked in your churches for decades. Some of you volunteer at your gurdwara or temple, preparing food for thousands of people every week. Some of you volunteer at your synagogue every Saturday. Certains d'entre vous qui regardez ce soir sont des membres de la communauté francophone. Vous représentez une partie considérable de l'histoire de l'Ontario qui s'entend sur plus de 400 ans. C'est notre histoire, notre présent et notre avenir. Votre vitalité, votre diversité en pleine expansion et votre force sont la force de l'Ontario. How did that go, Ronan? Some of our families have been in Ontario for 6 generations, some for 6 years, and some for 6 months. But apart from First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people, We all came from somewhere else to build a different kind of society, one where everyone would have a fair shot at a great life, education, health care, a good job, a life without fear of bigotry or discrimination. And we've got some of that right, but we're not there yet. So let me leave you with this. Whoever you are, in whatever corner of Ontario you have made home, you are part of a beautiful, vibrant place. Election campaigns make us feel that we're divided, that somehow we're not in this together. But believe me, we are. We are dependent on one another. From Fort Severn across to Moosonee, through Kenora, Thunder Bay, Wawa, Red Lake, Cochrane, Timmins, Renfrew, Cornwall, Ottawa, Kingston, the GTA, Barrie, Bracebridge, Kitchener-Waterloo, Niagara, London, Chatham, Windsor, and all the places in between. And just for all the speechwriters in the room, I know that list was too long, but it's my speech, and damn it, I was going to say all those places. Just be lucky I didn't name all 444 towns and cities and villages, because each one is unique, but it's also striving for the same things: a great future for our community, opportunity for our kids, care for our parents, a decent living. That's why we raised the minimum wage. That's why we fought for and won a better Canada pension plan across the country. That's why we're building roads and transit and water systems and schools and hospitals everywhere in this province. That's why your child can get his or her tuition covered if it's hard for you to pay. And that's why your baby's prescription is free, because we're investing in his or her healthy start. Yeah. And that's why your kids can go to full-day kindergarten. And it's why, if you're in an abusive relationship, there are more supports in place for you. That's right. That's why there's more care for your mom and dad who need it in their homes. Government exists to do the things that we can't do ourselves. And that job is never done. That's right. Il y a toujours plus à faire pour rendre vos vies plus faciles, vous donner des opportunités, du succès, et un avenir encore plus brillant. It all starts in the community. And I am so proud of all the Liberal MPPs who have been elected tonight. I'm absolutely certain that you will stand up for your communities, and you will fight to make sure every worker and every family in Ontario gets the care and opportunity that they deserve. I am resigning as the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. I know. We're not. I'm gonna cry. I have spoken to the party president and asked him to start the process of choosing an interim leader. And it is the right thing to do. There is another generation, and I am passing the torch to that generation. I know that tonight is not the result we were looking for, and no one feels that more sharply than I do. But this is not a moment where any of us should linger. We can't stay here. I hope that you can feel very proud of what we have done together in the past, and absolutely determined to take on the task that lies ahead. We won't get there with anger. We won't get there with despair. So although I've lost this election tonight, I have not in any way lost my passion for continuing this work, continuing to find ways to make it all work better. You know, life is always complicated, and I think we can look back at the past with rose-colored glasses. My dad today, when I took he and my mom to vote, he was talking about how his mom talked so much about not having been able to vote until she was 30 or so, and he said it's just like yesterday. He remembers that. So there have been fights throughout our history. But right now, climate change, technological change, Donald Trump, protectionism, populism make our world particularly complicated. Our job, and I mean all of us, is to tackle those forces, to make sure that we assert our values as the people of Ontario, strong, resilient, caring people. We've got a great thing going here. It's the best place in the world to live. People come from around the world, literally, to look at the excellence that we've built in our schools, in our healthcare, clean tech. So let's keep that momentum going. We all have a role to play, every single one of us. And as the song says, and I'm going to paraphrase, we're still standing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Merci.
Kathleen Wynne hugging her partner there as she steps down as the leader of her party tonight. But there's a conundrum here for the Liberals, Mike, as you look at the scorecard at the bottom of your screen. Right now, they're sitting at one seat below official party status, and Kathleen Wynne's seat could be the difference tonight.
Absolutely, 43 vote difference. There's one poll remaining in her seat in Don Valley West. I want to draw your attention to Thunder Bay Atikokan, one of the two Liberal seats being held in Thunder Bay. We have no results from this riding up here at the moment, but let's talk back about Thunder Bay Atikokan. One poll remaining in here. Let's take a look at the results and what's happening there. The former Municipal Affairs Minister Bill Morrow in second place, just an 81 vote difference. One poll remaining. Judith Monteith-Farrell, local union activist and member there, with a very slim lead. If that final poll comes in with enough support for the Liberals, this result could flip. The Liberals could hold on to this. That would give them that 8th seat that they need for official party status. Every vote counts, as they say. This is one of those examples right now. At this point, though, the NDP with that 81 vote lead in that. Kathleen Wynne with 43 vote lead in Don Valley West, with one poll remaining there as well. I'll throw that back to you, Dwight.
Those are the two seats that are in play out there. Thank you for that, Mike Wise. Let's get right to Rosie in the panel for reaction.
Okay, and there's so much to talk about, obviously, because we had to do some work up there. But now let's dig into the speeches a little bit. Okay, let's start with Kathleen Wynne, okay? I mean, we're going to see if she wins her seat. There's still a poll reporting it's very close, but she's decided to resign as Liberal leader. Is that surprising to anybody? Kathleen?
Not surprising, and I think her nod to the new leadership and a younger generation coming is what's needed to rebuild the party. I thought the speech was incredibly classy. Yes. She not only did she was graceful in her defeat, but she also set up what the path is forward. That we have to have an Ontario that's not full of hate. We have to rally and move forward on progressive values. So, I mean, kudos to her classy speech.
Yeah.
I'm empathetic. She's obviously a fighter, right? I mean, this has been her persona throughout. So. Say what you will about her policies, and I was never a huge fan of any of them, but she's a fighter, and I think it was really tough. It's tough for fighters to quit. Yep. So good for her for doing the right thing early and stepping aside. And it's going to be, I mean, whoever steps up to lead this party is going to need to have a lot of years in them. You know, it's going to be a lot of really, really hard work, but it's going to be a fun challenge for someone who wants to roll up their sleeves and get it done.
Yeah, and there will be, I mean, you know, to the advantage of the provincial party, they do have some pretty successful federal cousins they can lean on for ideas and support and crafting things that might be a little more attractive. I also thought it was a classy speech, and I also think it's very hard to leave a job that you love, especially when I think all of these leaders are very committed to public service. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I thought it was classy, as she always is. I think the key moment for me, absolutely, from what Kathleen mentioned here, was she passed it to the next generation of the party. And I think that there are absolutely a lot of Liberals right now that are looking backward, trying to sort of see what's taken place here, what went wrong. And I think that there's always a feeling that we need to go back to what worked before, and the world's changed over these past 15 years, and it's going to continue to change. And for us to become the party that is able to earn the trust of voters again, and to be able to come forward with a plan that leads us into the future, we need a future and forward-facing leader. And so I think her setup there was really important.
She did a pretty good job of outlining some of her legacy too, which I think is, you know, which is a good way to end things on. We'll see whether or not she wins her seat. Let's go back through the other two speeches then. Andrea Horvath, she came out fighting already, willing to say, I'm going to make this difficult for Doug Ford. I think that that's going to be perhaps more challenging than she thinks. Am I right? I mean, because he's got a big majority.
A big majority. We haven't talked a little bit about the popular vote, because there was this question a couple of weeks ago about maybe we'll have our Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton moment, in the sense of she could win the popular vote and he could win more seats. That's not been the case. It looks like he's, I think, 4 or 5 points ahead now on the popular vote. So that's a pretty solid lead. It's a decisive victory and a strong mandate. Having said that, she's got a role she can play in the legislature. She's got to, in the media and in the legislature and every day, be the person who is the second comment on everything the government does. But she's got to be disappointed, because there was a period there after May long weekend where it looked like they could have run away with it, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, and you and I were chatting about that a little bit before the show started, about whether the momentum started too soon, or like how you hold momentum for so long in an election campaign.
Well, when you look at wave campaigns, like I was remarking that, you know, in Alberta in 2015, what happened with under Rachel Notley, you know, the wave really started, the momentum started at E-11. You know, in 1990 in Ontario under Bob Rae, it was E-5. It's hard to stop momentum at that point, but there was an enormous amount of negative advertising coming at the NDP, anti-Horvath, from both sides, from both the Liberals and from the Conservatives in the last few weeks. And it clearly took effect when you look at parts of Southwest Ontario and other areas. But listen, as to her speech, I think, and obviously I'm biased, but you know, to see her in the crowd, to see that kind of energy, she lived this final moment in the campaign the same way she lived the entire campaign, which was in with people, high-fiving, lots of energy, you know, really beaming from the inside. And I think that's what Ontarians really find attractive about her as a leader.
It's interesting to me because they actually, maybe no one will like this, but Andrea Horvath and Doug Ford sort of have that in common. They are good with people. Like, they are good at working crowds and talking to people. And not that Kathleen Wynne wasn't, but they do have that in common. Let's break down his speech a little bit. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen him smile so big. He's obviously
really
thrilled.
Emotional.
Yes, he
in
was.
a different kind of way. It's happy, emotional, but he looked really good up there, I think, with his family. He looked a little bit overwhelmed, frankly, with the emotion and sort of happiness of it all. But the content of his speech was what you'd expect. It was for the people in a sort of a prolonged. He walked through his platform commitments. He talked about his team, but there was also a subtle message there, I think. Really landing on for the people and almost hinting to his team and to people watching his team, he's going to be the guy that when members of his cabinet say, oh, well, you know, a senior public servant recommended I do this because a think tank said that, he's going to say, whoa, whoa, whoa there. What does that mean for the people? And are the people who elected me going to like it? And are the people who got me here, and frankly, everyone else in Ontario, is it going to impact their day-to-day lives? How are they going to react? And I think if he can keep that ethos and that approach throughout his mandate, he'll do a really good job.
So that's a really good point. I think it's really hard to do. I think it's really hard to do. I think all politicians start that way, and then it's easy to get sort of caught up in.
But I would just say we've seen a campaign by Doug Ford that has completely rewritten the playbook, right? So change the media style, change his availability, challenge the notion that you have to pull out a fully costed platform. So he's changed so many things. Even tonight, he changed in terms of breaking protocol and coming out and speaking before the other leaders had properly conceded. So that I actually agree with Ginny. I think that, you know, he may continue that thrust of challenging things as he takes office.
He has to remain a touchstone, I guess, for all those things. Okay, we're going to have to put you guys on pause, but I'll come back. At least the couch is comfortable. Dwight, I'm going to toss it back to you.
All right, thank you, Rosie. Just a quick clarification. As you look at the scoreboard at the bottom of your screen, right now, the Liberals need 8 seats for official party status. Right now, they're sitting at 7. And since Kathleen Wynne has a slight lead in her riding right now. This reflects leaders that, or parties that they are leading or elected for those seats. So Kathleen Wynne's number is already reflected in that number 7, so they actually need one more to get to official party status, which would be the number 8. Let's head out to Mike Crawley. Now, Mike, you have covered Kathleen Wynne, the first female premier of Ontario, a majority government. She has now led this party to the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah, Dwight, and kicking off a leadership race. I mean, she said that she's spoken to the party president and said that they need to come up with an interim leader. Interesting thing, the Liberals still have a delegated convention that they're going to have. So, you know, there's going to have to be renewal. She talked about passing the torch to another generation. So I think that is basically saying that there's going to be somebody younger lead the party. They're going to have 4 years to rebuild and find a new leader, see if that person is able to connect with Ontarians, try and build the party's finances back up, because they're going to be in a little bit of rough shape after having run this campaign. Dwight?
All right, thank you for that, Mike. Let's head out to Vashi Kapelas next. And Vashi, you've heard from the PM on Ontario's election?
Well, the Prime Minister has released an official statement, but I've also heard from a source close to the Prime Minister a little bit of a translation from that statement. In the statement, he said, Ontarians have chosen to elect a majority government led by the Ontario PC Party. On behalf of the government, I offer my sincere congratulations to Doug Ford, who will have the honour and privilege to serve as Premier. Not exactly a jubilant a sign of congratulations there from the Prime Minister, but you would expect that. The source tells me that the Prime Minister was not surprised by the outcome of this election, that he had anticipated it for at least a week. They thought that a majority government by the PCs would be formed, so they weren't exactly taken aback. On any other week, it probably wouldn't be the best news to hear, that it would be a bit more of a downer. But the source tells me that because he's basically facing off with Donald Trump tomorrow, that this becomes next week's problem. So a little bit of context to what probably would have been a little bit more of a disappointment for Justin Trudeau on any other weekday or week. But given what's going to happen in the next few days with Donald Trump, not as much of a problem for him right now.
All right, thank you for that, Vashi. Maribel Tarouk is here now. Maribel?
Yeah, we are now looking ahead to how Doug Ford is going to run the province, taking a look at some of the promises that he made. And in terms of our Vote Compass respondents, the more than 460,000 who took part in this survey, they were asked about public transit. Always a hot issue, particularly in Toronto and in the GTA. How much should Ontario spend on public transit? And take a look at the responses here. More than a third actually believe that the province should spend somewhat more on public transit. And it's sort of divided between those who think that there should be about the same as what Ontario is spending now, and about 25% said they thought that Ontario should spend much more on public transit. Well, here's what the Conservatives have promised for that. $5 billion for subways, expand the GO transit system to Bowmanville and Kitchener, but also to upload Toronto's subway system to the province. And to that point, the mayor of the city of Toronto, John Tory, tweeting out congratulations to Doug Ford tonight, but also reminding him of his promise to invest in transit. So this is supposed to, I mean, it's a massive sampling size, Dwight, and the intent of it is created by political scientists and researchers, is to help be part of the public policy discussion, and particularly now that there is a new government here. So it looks like already Ford and those promises are being held to account.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the Scarborough subway again soon. Thank you, Maribel. Let's head out to Napier now. Maybe a cabinet position for Lisa MacLeod. Adrian Harewood spoke to her earlier.
I'm here now with Lisa MacLeod, the newly elected MPP for Nepean. Lisa MacLeod, you are finally a member of the governing party. What does that mean to you?
It feels really good. It's been a long road coming, obviously, and I've been able to be effective as a representative at Queen's Park in opposition, but I really feel right now I'll be able to be part of a government and make some change for the people that I represent, continue to build the resources we need for our schools and our education system, and also be a very big champion for the City of Ottawa, and I'm really looking forward to that. that.
You mentioned in your speech that for the first time you're going to Queen's Park with a team. What does that mean to have other representatives from Ottawa with you?
Well, it's fantastic. I mean, I have great representatives from outside of the city that I've been able to work with, Steve Clark, Randy Hillier, John Yakubuski, Jim McDonnell. But I think it's really important when there's big issues in our community, whether it's the opioid challenges, some infrastructure issues, and general matters that just concern everybody, like hydro, to have other support with me. I think that's incredible. So, I'm really excited. I'm very happy for those who are elected tonight. And of course, I want to say thanks to those outgoing members from the City of Ottawa who were defeated tonight that I worked with as well. And we worked hard in order to make change for Ontario, but I never discount the local politics.
I know that you expected the PCs to go to government much earlier, in 2011, in 2014. There's been a lot of disappointment for you over the last number of years. Why do you think the PCs were successful this time around?
You know what? I think we had a cohesive team, a very strong message. It was obviously the strongest campaign team centrally that we've had too since I've been elected. And I think there's a great deal of appeal for Doug Ford in the 905, so that was really good. I also think that people were tired of the Liberals, and I think it was time for change. And so I think they were kicking the tires tonight. I mean, we're looking at 74 seats. I'm just ecstatic. It feels really good.
You know Doug Ford. What kind of leader do you think he's going to be for the province of Ontario?
I think people have heard what the Liberals and the NDP want to say about Doug, but since he's become our leader in the Ontario PC party, he's been very collaborative with myself, Christine Elliott, Caroline Mulroney, and a number of others. Calls me, really once a week just to see how I'm doing, asks for advice. So I really appreciate that, and I think he's very dynamic. And he was actually described by one of my friends as the next Ralph Klein. So let's hope that we have somebody that is that dynamic in the next 4 years and commits to get this province back to balance and makes life a lot more affordable for everyday Ontarians.
You are looked upon as being the political lieutenant of Eastern Ontario, the senior minister here in the Conservative Party. What are the priorities of Eastern Ontario? What will you be taking with you to Queen's Park?
Well, we'll let Doug Ford commit to making and delivering a cabinet. I won't, I'll let that happen. But I can tell you, I will continue to work. I've Jan Harder here as our city councillor, Scott Moffat. I will continue to work with our city council to find out what their priorities are, and in order to deliver for our community. And that will include a response to the opioid crisis that we have here. It will commit to looking after getting the LRT built and building other infrastructure that we need. We are now going to represent 3 high-growth communities that are going to need new schools built and new resources that way. So those are some of the things that I'm going to make sure to be a very strong and powerful voice at Queen's Park for our city. And I'm very happy to be Ottawa's champion at Queen's Park.
Lisa MacLeod, congratulations, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Lisa MacLeod, definitely a strong voice at Queen's Park in opposition. She is now in government and a possible cabinet minister. Mike Wise, you have a look at some of the other people that Doug Ford might be looking for his cabinet.
That's right. A lot of strength in this, the people that have been elected tonight as well. First of all, though, I do want to talk about a bit of a hole in my map. York-Simcoe right here. This is the riding where Caroline Mulroney is running. Elections Ontario is holding the results. You'll notice on the screen there are 2 seats to come. There's 2 ridings where we haven't got any results yet. I believe there were some issues with schools and hold and secure in the area. So until everyone there and that final poll closes Elections Ontario is holding the results. We're expecting to get results there about 11:25. We may find that there. That said, let's look at some of the other people elected today that may show up in a potential Doug Ford cabinet. Lisa MacLeod, of course, as we talked about, first elected in 2006 in a by-election to replace John Baird, former cabinet minister under the Mike Harris government as well. Let's see what else. Other potentials, Vic Fideli, of course, the interim leader, took over after Patrick Brown stepped down as well. Possible finance minister, longtime critic, a lot of business experience as well, mayor experience, deep experience in this part of the cabinet as well. Let's go on and look at some other names. Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, John Yakubuski, again, another backbench long-term Tory in there. The Yakubuski Home Hardware Store, known for that in that part of the northern part of the province. Simcoe Gray, we've got to talk about Jim Wilson. First elected 1990, his experience with the PCs predates the Mike Harris years. He was elected when Bob Rae first swept into power. He had many high-level portfolios under the Mike Harris government, Minister of Health, Minister of Energy. One of the people certainly to look for some support, for some more to help as that new cabinet is built as well. Finally, we have one other result. Kathleen Wynne, the final poll has come in, and she has held on to her seat. We have all the results in, all polls reporting. She has been re-elected in Don Valley West. Dwight.
By a slim margin there.
Very
As
slim.
we said before, that's 7 now. Since her seat was already counted there, the Liberals still need to pick up 1 more to gain official party status. Let's head back over to Rosie and the panel.
Okay, do you want to play the Let's Make a Cabinet game? It's my favorite game. Mike started it off. I mean, I think he does have sort of an embarrassment of riches, right? Which is good news for him, because as someone who hasn't been a provincial politician, certainly hasn't been premier before, you sort of want to surround yourself with some experienced people, some people who have done jobs, sort of know how Queen's Park works. So let's start with you, Ginny. Take your best guesses there on who would be in.
So I think we should start with 2 people who endorsed his leadership. Raymond Cho, experience on City Council, represents Scarborough, so important to have Toronto representation in cabinet. Toby Barrett, rural, very in touch with the farming community in Southwestern
Toby Barrett,
Ontario.
I think, during the convention. He's quite fun.
Oh, he's a lovely man. I think they'll both could be considered for cabinet. And then, you know, Caroline Mulrooney and Christine Elliott, obviously both very, very capable women. Doug, to his credit, reached out to them very, very early in his leadership and sort of brought them into the fold and was out campaigning with him. They were really outside of their ridings and traveling around with him over the last sort of week of the campaign at almost every stop.
It is, making a cabinet is hard because you have to do geographical representation. You have to try and get some diverse people in there. You want some francophones in there. I mean, you want to try and make it represent the province. I mean, that's basically what a cabinet is. And make sure the best people are in the job, for sure. But you want people to look at that front bench and feel like they can see themselves and they're represented there. Do you think that that's going to be hard, easy? What do you think, Tiffany?
Yeah, well, I think it'll be one angle I'm thinking actually about is what ministries does he keep? How many ministers is he going to have? And if that's going to be women's issues has been separated out over the time in leadership. We've created new ministries, children, youth services. Very interested to see who's leading climate change on his end, or if he folds that into something because it's not a priority, or where are the efficiencies that he's looking for, and how big is the cabinet?
Because he does have to make efficiencies. If that's his whole thing, then he has to find a way to make it a little bit smaller.
The cabinet will almost certainly shrink.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of symbolism, whether it's firing the Hydro One CEO or shrinking cabinet, I mean, those are the kinds of messages he's going to want to send really early.
For sure.
It's also easier to control a cabinet when it's a bit smaller, right? And so it is easier for new governments to start smaller and then they can grow over time. But in terms of representation, he is going to have a challenge on the women front. He's certainly not going to do something that we've seen done in Alberta or federally in terms of a 50% cabinet, because he just doesn't actually have the women candidates to put in a cabinet like that, unless it's very small. But I do expect to see Carolyn. I do expect to see Christine Elliott, obviously Lisa MacLeod, others, but also some more experienced hand at the federal level. I imagine Paul Calandra might make it because of his experience federally, but I think that regionally he'll do well because he has that representation across the province.
Okay, so what does he do other than? Do you know who's going to run his transition team? Do you know? Is that
I don't.
public?
And frankly, I mean, I don't think it's. There's a reason the gossip hasn't been out there. I think they've done a pretty good job of keeping a lid on it and not measuring the drapes too much.
Yes, no, you never want to do that. You don't want to take anything for granted. So that's interesting. Yeah. But after that is done and a cabinet is in place, what is sort of the easiest policy thing to action right away? Is it the hydro?
Taxes.
I
mean, hydro, I think, is important because people want to see that relief right away.
Also symbolic,
I think you step out early in the game and say, here's my plan to get the hydro rates down. But taxes, I mean, you can do that from a legislative perspective really, really, really quickly, and I think it'll have the fastest impact on people's pocketbooks.
Okay, we'll leave it there with Tiffany, Ginny, and Kathleen for another moment, but we'll be back for a little bit more analysis, and I'll throw it back to you, Dwight.
Thank you, Rosie. Hurricane Hazel McCallion, the longtime mayor of Mississauga, did something strange in this campaign. She supported the Liberal Finance Minister, Charles Sousa, who's from Mississauga, but then she also supported Doug Ford for Premier. Let's hear what she had to say. She spoke to Diane Chianello earlier about the big win tonight.
I'm here with the famous and former mayor of Mississauga, Hazel McCallion. Ms. McCallion, you supported Liberal Charles D'Souza for your local MPP and Conservative Doug Ford. Why did you do that?
Well, you know, I believe in people, and Charles D'Souza has been an excellent representative of Mississauga, done a lot of great things for the city, the hospital, the waterfront, etc. And I felt you don't turn your back on somebody that works hard for the area that he represented. And in regard to Doug Ford, I felt that Doug Ford will bring good fiscal management to Ontario, which is needed very badly. I felt that we were on a spending spree that we can't afford because money doesn't grow on trees. Secondly, his whole program, and every time he spoke for the people, that he's going to represent the people well. And I think some excellent people have been elected. Christina Elliott, who ran for the leadership, was elected tonight. I think he'll put together a team that will respond to the needs of the people of Ontario. There's a lot of people in Ontario right now that are under a great burden of trying to make ends meet. And I believe that he will bring about the changes that are required.
What's the first thing you'd like him to do?
First thing I would like him to do, well, first thing he's got to do is find out the fiscal situation in the province. You can't expect him to do it overnight. He's got to, but delays in decision-making at the province has held back the building of houses. Young people today don't even dream of buying a house. It isn't available. And so he's going to make the changes that I feel are necessary to get Ontario open for business again, both from an investment point of view and from a good fiscal management point of view.
All right, thank you very much. That's Hazel McCallion here at Ford headquarters. She was sitting in the front row to welcome the new Premier Designate. Back to you.
Thank you for that. You know, if she ran again tomorrow, she would win again, one of the strongest female candidates ever to run for mayor in this country. And you're looking at some of the MPPs heading to Queen's Park, some of the female MPPs.
That's right. Looking at how many have been newly elected, it's up 10 from where it was at dissolution. So that's an increase in the number of female MPPs that will be there at Queen's Park. You can see that the PCs are responsible for 18 of those, the New Democrats for 9. They ran a slate of majority female candidates. Of course, the Liberals down 17 female MPPs, but that's because they're down pretty much 60 seats. So that is where that is happening. But you can see that it is coming an increase of 10 and probably going to be 11 because this does not include Caroline Mulrooney in York Simcoe, where we don't have any results. So there will be more women in Queen's Park when they assemble after this is all over.
All right, thank you for that, Eric. Let's head out to Mike Crawley now. We talk about the Ford legacy in politics in this province, and he has Michael Ford with him, former trustee, now Toronto City Councillor.
And nephew of Doug Ford as well. Congratulations, Michael.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
So what do you think it is about your family that has this winning formula in politics?
Well, you know what? I think my family has been dedicated to the people of North Etobicoke and the City of Toronto for many of years. And I think it's why we resonate with people is, you know, we really listen to them. We go to their front doorstep and we try and understand what's affecting them in their lives and how we can make a difference for them.
To what extent do you think, though, that the antagonism that there was among the public towards the Kathleen Wynne Liberals and 15 years of Liberal government, that just basically made an opportunity for you? Because, look, a few months ago, Doug Ford was not even running to be Premier. He was running to be the mayor.
Right.
So
no,
was this just, you know, opportunism?
You know, what I would say is that I think that we came to a crossroads that the PC party needed a new leader to move forward. Doug, you know, put his name forward to the party, and they gave him that mandate to do so. And traveling all across the province, whether it's up north in Kenora, west to Windsor, east to Ottawa, we heard the same concerns from people at their front door, and it was affordability. that hydro rates are too high, taxes are too high, not enough jobs in the economy. And Doug ran on a platform and a campaign, to move that forward and to better the livelihoods of people in Ontario.
The last thing I want to ask you about is the promises, a lot of tax cut promises. I'm assuming that those are going to get fulfilled, but some of the questions that people have for the Doug Ford administration are going to be, what is going to get cut? Where are these efficiencies going to be found? So how big of a challenge is it going to be to balance the budget, make all of those promises, and not actually cut services or cut a single job?
Well, look, Doug, this whole campaign has said that, we are going to be focused on finding efficiencies. 4% on the dollar, Mike, you heard that hundreds of times. And you know what? On day one, he is going to open up the books. He will, give direction to his team to let's open up the books and let's start looking at it. He has made a promise to the people of Ontario that he is not cutting. And there are different ways to find efficiencies. We looked at, and we saw that just the Auditor General alone found billions of dollars. So I think once, Doug and his administration gets in, he'll be opening up those books and seeing what they find.
Okay. Dwight, Michael Ford, back to you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Now, Doug Ford has surrounded himself with a lot of experienced people, a lot of experienced politicians. Many of them may end up in his cabinet. Many of them are winning seats in this election tonight. And Mike Wise, you have a look at that for us.
That's right. I think it was Rosie said, talking about the depth of experience he has available to him as well. A lot of it surrounded around the GTA as well, ridings to the north, south, east, and even inside, not south of Toronto, but within the city of Toronto as well. Let's give you some examples here on the board as well. We've got to talk, of course, about Christine Elliott, the new MPP for Newmarket Aurora, her return to Queen's Park. She placed second to Doug Ford in the Ontario leadership race. Perhaps have a conversation about something that, if we go east of the city, Pickering, Uxbridge, Peter Bethlen-Falvey, sizable win there as well. He's a CEO of TD Financial Securities, a lot of experience in investment, and actually did a financial review at one point of the Ontario Liberal government. Certainly someone to talk to if Doug Ford is looking for efficiencies in government spending as well. Right next to that riding in Ajax, Rod Phillips also elected. Here's another name, Oakville, North Burlington, Effie Triantafilopoulos. I was practicing that name. She has a lot of experience in international trade. If we are getting to a situation where there is a showdown in trade tariffs, steel tariffs, manufacturing, or any sort of NAFTA issues, she's a person to talk to. She had worked with the Canadian Manufacturers Association, Export Association, also did some work with the federal government on NAFTA negotiations. And we can, here's another confirmation. Michael Couteau, this is another riding we were watching, Don Valley East. We have one more to show you, some breaking news as well. Thunder Bay Atikokan, this is over. This was the Liberals' last chance to try to flip a riding and get up to 8 for official party status, but no, in Thunder Bay Atikokan they have lost. Bill Morrow, the former municipal affairs minister, has lost that seat there. So the Liberals, well, there's still 2 ridings to come there as well. Unlikely given past voting projections, but we never know. At this point, 7 seats for the Liberals, which is that one shy of official party status.
So you're saying they still have a chance, maybe, Mike, but it's a slim one. Not even.
I'm not saying anything. Let's say that. We can.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Good job with the numbers tonight. That 7 is big because they do need 8 to get official party status at Queen's Park. Let's head back over to Rosie and the panel to talk about what this win means for politics in this country, Rosie.
Yeah, so let's go there. I mean, we heard a little bit from Vashi that the Prime Minister has sent out this press release that he's going to deal with Doug Ford after he's done with Donald Trump, and I don't blame him. He's got enough on his plate right now. But I think it does change the dynamic of the country a little bit. So how do you think it might do that, Kathleen?
Well, a couple things. Tonight we've already seen the Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, come out and saying glad to have another ally in the anti-carbon tax fight. And same thing from Jason Kenney, who's the leader of the UCP in Alberta. So right now they've been kind of playing foil to Justin Trudeau's kind of climate change agenda. They have just got a new ally in Premier-elect Doug Ford. So that's going to change provincial-federal relations significantly, I think.
Yeah, the Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, has taken a really different approach from Stephen Harper. He said, I'm going to have us all meet, we're going to have the Council of the Federation, we're going to come together and talk about things like pipelines and carbon taxes. And that made sense, you know, when he first became Prime Minister, because a lot of premiers were sort of on board. And now we're seeing a situation where that's not really the case anymore. And Ontario sort of swings that balance of power over the premiers in a different direction. And if you see Scott Moe, Jason Kenney, and Doug Ford unite on issues even beyond the carbon tax, that's going to be a real problem for Justin Trudeau. Yep. When Doug Ford was running for leader, straight out of the gate, he said he was going to oppose a carbon tax. Up until that point, people really thought it was off the table for Ontario, that they'd settled it. They were going to price carbon. And now that's just not the case anymore. So it's going to be
Jason Kenney has to win his election first, though, before he gets all that influence. I know he's very eager. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think that these two governments in the previous form with Kathleen Wynne worked really well together. She campaigned with the Prime Minister, and over time she was a real leader among the premiers in pushing issues forward, and a true ally. I think that this is a really key moment with what's taking place with us in the U.S. and these trade discussions, and Ontario has a huge stake in that as well. So I think seeing how Doug Ford manages a relationship with a Liberal Prime Minister is going to be really interesting.
I would say, though, I mean, one of the first things Doug Ford did say in his victory speech was Ontario's open for business. Clearly, one of his primary goals is to get that growth number up, get the jobs number up, get the economy firing on all cylinders. That is a shared goal of Justin Trudeau. And, you know, Canada's economy lives and dies by Ontario's economy. So they're both mature adult politicians, and I think on issues of the economy, they'll be able to get together and do what needs to get done to compete with the U.S. and grow.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think the biggest clash for them is obviously going to be the carbon tax. And I don't even know practically, and I guess we'll look at this in the coming days, how you undo a cap and trade exchange system that's already set up. Do you have to give notice to pull out of that? Do you have to pay penalties? I don't even know how that's going to shake down. And the Prime Minister has certainly said that he plans to, he expects everybody to do this. The only other thing that might be an issue too is marijuana. Now, I know that they can't impose how a province sells things, but I think Doug Ford has suggested it could be sold more broadly, right?
He indicated early on in the campaign that he might be open to some, you know, seeing some more private influence in the retail market for cannabis. Certainly, he's doing that for alcohol. I think he kind of backed off that a bit because he's, you know, no one knows how cannabis legalization is going to shake out. It just passed the Senate federally.
Tonight, it was a super busy night.
But I don't know that he'll take that super rigid approach to retail that the current
I just quickly add that, you know, while there's lots of risk for Trudeau in terms of the change of government that's just happened in Ontario, there could be a reward.
Yes, I think so too.
You know, if people get used to in the next year and don't like a Ford government, that could help the federal fortunes of the federal Liberals. You know, that said, you know, I could play it the other way too, saying now the Conservatives at a federal level have a better base to build upon for their election in 2019.
I think both those things are probably true. And sometimes when you're Prime Minister having a foil, it can be a good or bad thing, but I think that it can be a good thing, and I think we're seeing at least parts of that when he deals with Donald Trump, although probably doesn't want those problems. Okay, we may or may not come back, but let me thank you all so much for all your help tonight. It was really good to have you. Smart people with me. Thank you. Back to you, Dwight.
All right, thank you for that, Rosie. Now the CBC Decision Desk is telling us, you see that 7 on the scorecard at the bottom of your screen? That's it. They need 8 to get to official party status, the Liberals do, and they are not going to reach that plateau tonight. Let's look at the depth of the Liberal defeat with Eric Schreiner.
Yeah, those 7 seats, that'll be their worst result. 1951 was the last time they were anywhere close to that. And that 19.6%, that is the worst that the Liberals have ever done. 21.8% was their previous low in 1923. So the Liberals are at a historic low in support. And you can see that they lost support everywhere. Their best performance was losing 15 points in Northern Ontario, Eastern Ontario, and in the Hamilton Niagara. You can see that they were in the low teens in a lot of the parts of the province. Their greatest support was in Eastern Ontario and in Toronto, which was what the polls had suggested would be the case. But you have to look at these numbers where they dropped. 23 points in Toronto, 22 points in the GTA, 20 points in Central Ontario. This is why the Liberals were not able to win a lot of seats. But that 7 seats that they were able to win does suggest that maybe that local factor did have an impact and was able to get the Liberals up to 7, but they needed to get up to 8. And these numbers are why they weren't able to get to that point.
All right, thank you for that. Let's head out to Mike Crawley. He has covered this government from day one. And Mike, we knew it was going to be bad, but there was some hope at some point, even during the coverage tonight, that they might get to that official party status, but it was not meant to be.
Yeah, Dwight, can I just get a quick clarification? Because what I'm seeing is that Eglinton Lawrence, have we called Eglinton Lawrence for the PCs? Because what I'm seeing is that the Liberals are still there.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike Cole's riding, so. Yeah. They still had a shot at that one, but either way, this is a historic low here for the Liberals. Even if they get to 8 seats, look, it's a disaster. I don't really think there's any positive thing that you could put on this. The party's going to be in financial difficulty. There's going to be a lot of turmoil, a lot of recrimination, a lot of second guessing over Kathleen Wynne's decision to stay on as leader. There were some voices in the party a year ago that said, she really needs to think long and hard about whether she is the one that's dragging them down. So. They do have some hope. I mean, look, the New Democrats out in British Columbia got knocked down to a couple of seats back in the early 2000s, and then they came back and formed government, but it did take them 15 years. I think the biggest concern right now for the Liberals is that the NDP is right now positioned as the alternative to Doug Ford. And that's in some ways what I found most remarkable about Andrea Horvath's speech. You saw her raising her arms up in the air. She looked like somebody who won. She didn't win.
She sort of did.
She didn't win.
She sort of did.
But, well, she won. If she won, it's like Jack Layton won in 2011. I don't know that winning official opposition status is really winning. It's positioning. It's putting them in a good spot for 2022.
Yes.
So in 4 years, the NDP can position themselves and say, we are the alternative to the PCs and Doug Ford. And if we enter a tumultuous 4 years, if Doug Ford ends up having to make significant cuts to be able to make the tax cut promises that he's done, if there's a bunch of cuts in services and people aren't very happy about that, the NDP could be positioned to form the government after that.
I do think that there's sort of, and I alluded to it during the Doug Ford speech, there is this interesting sort of family legacy story playing out tonight, whether it be with Doug Ford, Jagmeet Singh's brother, he was also elected tonight. So there's a sort of Singh legacy. And Caroline Mulroney, who we would expect to be elected in her riding tonight. I don't think that's Mike Harris's son. And I think I'm told Caroline Mulroney is going to actually speak shortly in her riding as well. So, I mean, that's interesting to me. And Mike, feel free to weigh in that, that this sort of political stuff gets inside your veins, it gets passed down through family, and that you want to give back. Even though you may see your parents going off and having to work really hard, it's something that everybody sort of picks up on. And I think that that's sort of we've seen that through all the parties actually tonight, and that's sort of a nice part of it.
Mike, as we are coming to the end of the program, could we just get your final thoughts on this campaign and what Ontario voters decided tonight in stark contrast from where we were to where we're heading?
Very clearly the platform that Doug Ford put out, the promises that he made to cut taxes, resonated with people who are feeling that life has become unaffordable. This was a key thing that we were hearing when you talk to ordinary folks, that the sense that they were struggling economically. And in many ways, it contradicted the macroeconomic numbers. There's lots of growth in economically in Ontario, historic lows in unemployment, but people are finding that it's difficult to afford things. And that message somehow, that government is the reason why you're struggling to afford things, that worked for people. The Liberals tried, and the NDP tried in some ways a different message, which was, we're going to raise the minimum wage. We're going to do things that we're going to have government as being the help, that we're going to solve the problem that way. That didn't seem to work for people. So Doug Ford has an ambitious agenda. He also says he's going to, improve the healthcare system, reduce the waiting lists and the hallway medicine that's been an issue here. So, you know, also too, the fact that he didn't actually put a fiscal plan in his platform just kind of goes to show you that there's a certain amount of trust. You know, people are putting their trust in the PCs. And we're going to have to wait and see how that all plays out.
Yeah, and you'll be one of the people at Queen's Park watching that first. Thank you very much, Mike. And as Mike said, I mean, his message was for that, quote, struggling middle class, right? That's who he was reaching out to, and it seemed to have worked. Now, this is Andrea Horvath's third chance at this. A lot of people are saying if they didn't do well tonight, maybe they need to change leaders in the NDP. Let's head back out to Chris Glover in Hamilton Centre. The 39 seats on the board tonight, leading or elected. Is that enough for Andrea Horvath to then be that party in waiting to maybe go for it the next time around and actually head into government, Chris?
Well, Dwight, we of course asked Andrea Horvath if the results tonight meant that she would perhaps step down and let a new leader come into her place as a result of the fact that, as you mentioned, she has now tried 3 times to form government and has not been able to do that. She said absolutely not. And she also said that she was very proud of the work that she and her campaign had done. She pointed out in her speech, and then again with us in the scrum after the speech, she mentioned that the NDP has now made inroads in every part of the province. And that, of course, is very significant given the fact that the NDP was completely shut out in Eastern Ontario, for example. And so she is saying that she has a strong mandate as the official opposition, which is something that the NDP has not been since 1987, some 30 years. So a lot of folks will not even know them in that role. But she was just saying to us a few moments ago that she is ready to hold Doug Ford and his new majority government to account. Dwight.
Thank you, Chris Glover, Hamilton Centre, for us tonight. You were talking about the legacy candidates in there, Caroline Mulroney being one of those people. And Mike, you have some info on her riding.
Yes, we've just got results in from York Simcoe, her riding as well, and we can report that she has been elected there. Very sizable majority there. Did not take a lot to find when those results finally came in. 14,000 seat margin on there over as well. The Liberal Laura Lee Carruthers, a local trustee, in 3rd place there. So Caroline Mulroney will be joining the PC caucus at Queen's Park as well.
And I would imagine she's got a proud dad. He came out occasionally, didn't want to overshadow her too much, but he came out occasionally, and so he must be. That's a big Mulroney legacy, too. And I know there's other people that may run in that family at some point as well. Okay, Vashi is going to come back and join us with some final thoughts. You've been on longer than us, girl. Okay, give us some final thoughts about the evening and sort of where things go from here. Not only for Doug Ford, but I think how those relationships get built across the country.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that the implications are not just provincial in scope, but national. And you touched on it earlier. It's not necessarily a direct correlation with what happens in 2019. It won't necessarily predict it. But in the immediacy of it all, it does affect the provincial and federal relationship and sort of the dynamic at the table between the Prime Minister and premiers. And even though the source was telling me that it's next week's problem, and I will say that a lot of his communication staff were saying, no, we're really looking forward to working with the new premier. There are points of tension. There are major points of tension that you and the panel went over that I think will only serve to underscore what is already a kind of fraught relationship between some of the provinces and the Prime Minister and make his job, Justin Trudeau's job, just that bit much more difficult when it comes to that relationship sort of writ large.
Yeah, certainly some implications here nationally. Thank you for your time tonight, Vashi. She has been at it a long time. I saw her out in front of the Broadcasting Center reporting earlier. The sun was up at that time and has since gone down. Thank you, Vashi.
Thanks for having me.
Let's head to Maryville, Tarouk now. And Maryville, you're talking marijuana?
I am talking marijuana. Well, that's what the panel started. Rosie and the panel started.
It's because it passed in the Senate tonight. It's totally relevant.
And it's going to come Ontario's way, just like with the rest of the country.
And how we're going to sell it is one of the things that he's talking about.
Exactly. Well, when the Liberals had to make a decision, they made an announcement that they were going to open 40 cannabis stores this year. So that was a question for our Vote Compass respondents, and it asked, only government-run stores should be able to sell marijuana once it has been legalized. What is your opinion? Do you agree or disagree? Well, a third, the biggest chunk of the respondents, said that they strongly agree that only government-run stores should be able to sell marijuana once it's legalized. And that is a little bit different from what Doug Ford has talked about in terms of that. He didn't really outline a specific plan for it, of course, but he has always leaned towards a free market policy on this and wasn't very comfortable with the government dictating the locations of these stores. So that's an open question too, is that the Liberals having announced 40 stores opening, what's Doug Ford going to do with that? And in a matter of months, those decisions, I think, are going to have to be made, guys.
Yes, they will. Thank you for that, Maribel. Let's get one more check now with Joanne Keelnello, and I think she has Tony Clement with her.
So I'm here with former PC provincial cabinet minister and former PC federal cabinet minister, Tony Clement. You're in opposition now. I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about how this PC provincial government might get along with the Liberal federal government.
Well, I think that there's a lot of points of contention now. Obviously, Doug Ford was very clear on how he felt about the carbon tax, which really Justin Trudeau has been very coercive in his trying to push that down to the provinces. So I think that's going to be definitely a point of contention. Doug Ford has a strong message of government spending within its means, of respecting the taxpayer. That's another point of contention with Justin Trudeau. So I think Justin Trudeau's world has changed very much tonight. And the sands are shifting underneath his feet a little bit, and he's going to have to be nimble and work with Doug Ford, and that means some of his policies are going to have to be reassessed.
But surely that our new Premier designate will also want things from the federal government. Absolutely. Is he going to have to make some adjustments as well?
Well, I think Doug Ford wants to work with people on behalf of Ontarians. So I think he will offer the olive branch on certain things like infrastructure as a good case in point. He'll want to make sure that Ontario gets its fair share on infrastructure spending from the federal government. But he was very clear about certain things. He was very clear how he felt about the carbon tax. I don't think that's going to be a point of negotiation. And at the way things are stacking up with provincial elections, Justin Trudeau is going to feel the heat, because the next election may bring about a Conservative government in Quebec for the first time in ages. The next Alberta election may bring a Conservative government back in Alberta. So these are things that Justin Trudeau is going to have to adjust to if he wants to stay in power.
Thank you very much, federal MP Tony Clement. Back to you, folks.
Thank you for that, Joanne. Let's get final thoughts from our panel tonight.
My panel extraordinaire, I think Dwight means. Yeah. Okay, just wrap up. I mean, we sort of had a sense maybe at the beginning of the night of how things might unfold, but now it's all happening. It's all real. Tiffany, I know it was a rough night for you. It's hard to be a Liberal on nights like this, you know, but give me a sense of some final thoughts about where things are at now.
It's hard. You don't govern for 15 years without losing some people along the way and disappointing some people and stakeholders, and I think we've got a lot of relationships to build. But I'm looking for the silver lining tonight. It's on my bracelet. So there was a moment when I jumped up to see Michael Coteau retaining his seat, and I think we're also seeing Mitzi doing well, and so that's 2/3 of Black Caucus staying in and grown, not totally in my party, but Ontario Black Caucus has grown, and so that's something I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it is. How about you, Jenny?
Well, there's so much more than just a new premier and a new cabinet. Corporate Ontario and everything about that undergirds our economy has to think about how do we interact with the new government. What does this mean? For Conservatives like me, all of a sudden, you know, these cabinet ministers and the whole government's going to have to hire literally hundreds of staff.
Yes.
That means all sorts of new people flooding into government. That's a huge, massive task, and all my peers are going to be kind of seized with that. So I'm spending some time thinking about that as well.
Yeah, and actually what often happens is they come to Ottawa and they steal people away, but Andrew Scheer probably doesn't like that idea, so forget it. But that becomes staffing up is actually a challenge, and the federal Liberals had some trouble with that, and they had to come to Queen's Park, and anyway.
A few geeky things. I'm looking at where will the recounts be. Will be some riding still switch back and forth. I know there's a really tight race. It's been called in Ottawa and West Nepean for the Progressive Conservatives, but I'm still hoping maybe it could come back on a recount. You never know.
Hope springs eternal.
Chandra, bring it home. But also the rebates, looking at the fact that this party is going to get, our party's going to get a historic number of rebates in terms of the percentage vote they got. And then, of course, I'm also just looking to the civil society and the progressive movement. What will the childcare movement do now when it's been very clear that Doug Ford is not interested in building up childcare spaces in nonprofit homes across, nonprofit centers, across the province. So that, quest for affordable nonprofit childcare is still out there for so many families.
Okay, Kathleen Monk, Ginny Moffat. Tiffany Gooch, thank you so much. Really, really great to have such smart women, smart strategists, smart representatives of your party here with me tonight. You helped a lot.
And congratulations.
And Jenny's getting married on the weekend, so she really didn't have time for any of this, but she made time anyway. So thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. Back to you, Dwight.
Great panel, and we do appreciate their time. Let's get some final thoughts now from the two gentlemen who have been guiding us through the numbers this evening, telling us how this PC majority came to be. Mike Wise, Eric Grenier.
We talked about this being a change election. We have the numbers to show that that motivated a lot of people to come out here. Look at this turnout number, 58.4% voter turnout is the estimate at this point, 8.8 points up from last time. 2014 election was 51.3% turnout. So a lot of people turning out, a lot of people apparently turning out to cast votes for the PCs in this one.
Those are big numbers for those two parties. The NDP has never had more than 1.5 million votes. They're way above that. They're at 1.9 million. And you can see that the Progressive Conservatives are at 2.3 million. That's probably the most they've ever gotten. And you can see the Liberals, they did get over the 1 million mark, but just barely. But that is a lot of votes that the Liberals lost. A lot of raw votes, actual voters didn't come out to vote for that party. But between the two parties, the PCs and the New Democrats, you're looking at well over 4 million votes for those two parties. Change election, it does seem like the two change options got a lot of votes tonight.
They certainly did. Gentlemen, thank you for that. A majority Progressive Conservative government, a big win tonight, Rosie. This has to be looked at as a triumph for Doug Ford. He delivered.
Yeah, he did deliver, and I think he proved a lot of his critics wrong as well, right? I mean, there was a lot of questions about whether he was up for the job. I mean, I guess we'll see over the next 4 years, but whether he could actually bring this home and do it in, as we've talked about through the evening, a very short period of time from becoming leader to now becoming Premier Designate. I mean, that's got to be a record in and of itself, right? And I think that makes it an even more convincing win. I think the things to look for in the days ahead, you know, voter turnout will be interesting as we look at, you know, how many people, who turned out, what kinds of people turned out, who voted for who. I think those things are all things we can watch for. But Ontario had a decision to make. They decided they wanted something different, and they went pretty different. And for me, because I love politics so much, you know, no matter the outcome, this was a dramatic, exciting evening, and Ontario knew what it wanted and it went for it. And I think people, you know, getting out there and voting is a good thing.
Yes, and it's very important that we do get out and vote, and we did that tonight, and that's what led to this. We had some questions, though. He had a really big lead at the beginning when it came out, when the polls came out. And there was some worry, though. And, you know, Patrick Brown said it. He was one of his critics, too. He said they're going to snatch the defeat from the jaws of victory. And I think a lot of people looking at these results tonight have to give that credit to Doug Ford. That, you know, he ran a disciplined campaign. They did things differently. They said, you know what, we're not going to do the traditional media way. We're not going to have a bus. We're not going to be accessible to you. We're not necessarily going to give you a platform. We're going to do things our way. And the people of this province said, okay, we're good with that. Yeah, and I think you're right that the credit does go to him and to a lot of the team around him that brought him to this point. As I said before, campaigning and governing, really different things. Things are about to get real for the Progressive Conservatives and for Doug Ford. He's never done provincial politics before. And we talked about it before. How do you keep that ethos of being with the people as you go into the institution that is Queen's Park and become Premier? That'll be one of his challenges coming up, and there'll be others as well. But this is his night to savor it for 24 hours. That's all he gets. That's and then you're going to be all over. That's right. And then I'd like Adam tomorrow in an interview just to ask him some questions, as I'm sure you would as well. All right. It's been a big pleasure for all of us here. A pleasure to work with you, Dwight. Yes. My first time ever, and I appreciate it. We'll get to do it again. For all of us here in Toronto, our reporters across the province, my panel, thank you all for joining us. Have a good night. The National is up next. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Ontario votes 2018. Your new Premier, Doug Ford.